Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to continue with the fourth part of our annual 8-episode series in which we go team by team, comparing notes on our projections for the 2025-26 season. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling this morning?
Yeah. Oh my God. I was telling Nate here offline, mornings are not my thing. All right. I have to be up because I have children, but it usually takes me about half the day, just even wake up. So I've been just chugging coffee over here. And that feels good. You all see the results when I'm highly caffeinated. I'm not there yet. All right. But halfway through this one, I should be, right. So that feels good. But buddy, the off season is in full swing here, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel for the fantasy hockey season here. We got lots of mocks going on. We got all the best balls, like this content that we're doing here. This is our fourth one. That's crazy. I remember last year I felt like we were sort of struggling to get these in. I do believe there was one night where Nate and I just strapped in for 4 hours and did two episodes in a row for release. It was crazy. So I'm starting to get juiced here. I'm starting to get excited, and these are four really fun teams to talk about too.
Yep, we've got Los Angeles, Minnesota, Montreal, Nashville to go over. And I don't know if everyone would concur that they're the most exciting teams to go over, but I actually do think there's some pretty interesting talking points here and some reasons to get excited about some players down the lineup on some of these teams as well. So I say we get into it. Let's start it off with the Los Angeles Kings. Key departures here. Number one is going to be Vladislav Gavrikov, big time shutdown defenseman. Obviously, not really fantasy relevant, but I do think it'll have some impact on the team here. And I think that those effects may actually have some impact for fantasy. Jordan Spence from the right side and Tanner Jeannot as their third, fourth line banger guy. Key additions here Andrei Kuzmenko came over at the end of last year and carved out a pretty nice little role for himself. Playing top line, top power play. Corey Perry, Brian Dumoulin, Cody Ceci. Also, they had Joel Armia. So more rounding out the depth of this squad as the top few lines are pretty intact in Los Angeles once again. Anything really sticking out to you here from the key departures, key additions, Blake?
I mean, losing a guy like Gavrikov, he was a big factor in their defensive system there and presence. He really understood the system here and played really well within it. So, yeah, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to replace his minutes because he was a big minute guy down there. But Jordan Spence loss is that's interesting as well. Like, I think that was a guy that could definitely solid NHLer for this team. So, how are they going to respond? I think that'll be really interesting. And then, they picked up Corey Perry. So that means they're going to go to the Stanley Cup finals and lose this year. Shout out to Corey Perry. At least he's won one. I can't feel too bad for the guy. Plus, he's an all-time dingus. So, that's whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how LA is defensively this year.
For sure. Talk about the coach, Jim Hiller, returning as head coach. Unfortunately for us in fantasy, he is one of the most defense-focused coaches in the entire league. Second in the league in even strength scoring chances against per 60 were the Los Angeles Kings. They definitely play from the back end out, and obviously that does have some repercussions for their ability to generate offense. That being said, at least it's an established system. The players are comfortable. You're not getting, some big change year over year where there's a lot of uncertainty. So at least we have some idea of what this is going to look like. Don't think they're going to reinvent the wheel here with Jim Hiller. You know, I think that this could be a spot where Jim Hiller is actually under the seat is the tiniest bit warm, I think, is what I would say. After some of the postseason coaching decisions that were made by Jim Hiller, I think they directly contributed to that team falling apart against Edmonton. You can debate whether they actually had a shot to take down McDavid and Draisaitl over a full 7-game series, but definitely the way it went down left a lot of people with a less than pleasant idea of Jim Hiller's capabilities as a head coach, especially in playoff time. For fantasy here this season, my biggest question is, do you think he'll play Brant Clark?
You know what? I hope so. Like again, Gavrikov, Spence, gone. So who's taking those minutes? I think at the very least, Clark is going to get more minutes than he got last season. I think that makes sense. He's got another year or off season of development here. Mikey Anderson's going to eat. Obviously, like that's a guy they really need to be playing well. And then Drew Doughty is going to have his full minutes as well. But I do think we're going to see Brant Clark elevated up the lineup a little bit. And then just in terms of Hiller, like. Yeah, the LA is a defensive team for sure, but it's worth noting they were second in the league in rush shots at 5-on-5. Second in the league. That's pretty good, but the problem is they were really low percentage shots. Right,
Mm-hmm.
their expected goals didn't match that. Their expected goals for was like 22nd. So second in the league in rush shots, but expected goals 22nd. So they're just chucking pucks there. But I mean, this is a hardworking team. I don't know. I'm really hoping like Hiller has to make some changes here in to kind of get offense going. And I really hope that he prioritizes that second line a little bit.
All right, let's get into it. Power play first up. Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala, Byfield all feel like locks to me. I don't see how you're bumping these guys off. Kopitar, still honestly like a pretty elite level playmaker on the power play, is exactly where he can still shine. He can stand stationary, move around just a little bit, open up those windows, and make a really good pass. That's something that doesn't really disappear with age for a lot of these formerly top end players. Adrian Kempe at the height of his powers, Fiala at the height of his. They're both in their primes. And Quentin Byfield on the ascension as the 1C of the future, if not now, there in Los Angeles. Kuzmenko comes in, really does carve out a role on this power play. They go with the 5 forward setup. After Kuzmenko arrives, Kempe as the wheelman on the back end because of his defensive prowess, very similar to, what they did with Marner in Toronto. Maybe they were taking a page from that book there. They say, hey, we have this guy Kempe who we actually do trust back there. He can defend a 2-on-1 and not look out of his league. So that's an interesting spot because Kuzmenko was pretty effective there. Arguably, it was, this power play was one of the reasons that they were up on Edmonton early in that series with the 5 forwards. So I think base expectation should be that Kuzmenko gets to go back there. Whether or not that lasts for the whole season is definitely more up for debate, though, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, this power play, it was not good in the regular season. So it was nice to see that they were able to have some success in the playoffs there. But yeah, regular season, this was the 27th overall power play. That's showing no good, right? They were also 5th worst in expected goals for on the power play. That's really not a nice place to be, especially when you're already a defensive team. Like you hope that special teams are what's going to, kind of float your boat there. So, and for me personally, I'm not a fan of the 5 forward power play for fantasy or reality. But, I could see them starting out, like to your point, right? They did have some success there. They've got too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You got Byfield as well. Like if they go to a 4-forward power play, is Byfield like for sure on the top power play? I'm not sure about that, right? And he should be. I think Byfield absolutely should be on the top power play. But Kuzmenko, are you really putting him down to power play too? Because his value is as a power play 1 forward. This is a guy that is really good at that. What do you think about this? This is something that was just kind of going through my mind before talking about this episode. Is like, do you think there's a chance that Kopitar maybe moves down to the second power play and they kind of run with Byfield up as the top line center on the power play there? Like just again, due to age related decline, like, Kopitar has been massively effective. The power play's sort of been holding him up, but I don't know. Do you think he really belongs on power play 1 at this point in his career?
I think it's a valid question to ask for sure. I think there'd be a lot of organizational inertia towards taking him off. That being said, like his involvement in that power play, his IPP and stuff has been declining. That power play really does run through Fiala. I have him projected for 79% IPP
Yeah,
this year.
massive.
Basically, everything goes through Fiala's stick at one point or another on that power play as currently constructed. So I think that it's definitely possible, but also I think there's some organizational inertia around it, and also it's the captain.
Yeah.
There's yeah, it just becomes a situation where okay, now he's the 2C, two power play, and he's riding off into the sunset. Like that, it almost has to be like this is his last year on the team if that's what's happening, which may be the case here for Kopitar this year. But yeah, I don't think that's the way they'll start out, but I could see if it continues to be a sore spot that they will be willing to try just about anything to get this power play back on track. So that's definitely not off the table. If they do go with a defenseman, though, Blake, Doughty or Clark, we've talked about this before. Last year, I was high on Clark last year because I do think he's a pretty elite level offensive talent on the blue line. That being said, Drew Doughty, you talk about organizational inertia.
Yep.
Drew Doughty is definitely a prideful guy and a guy who wants his role. So he had to give it up when they went with the 5 forward power play. So maybe that was the first step along the way. But do you think that Doughty or Clark would be top power play if they do go with the defenseman up there?
It's a great question. And I wish it had a little bit more weight to it, but because of this 5 forward power play potential, it's like, now we're talking about the scraps, right? That
Yeah.
we're shaving some time right off the top for Doughty and Clark. In my opinion, it's probably going to be Doughty. I think I wishfully projected it as Clark, but I've got Doughty for like 2 minutes, 25 seconds on the power play, Clark for 2 minutes and like 20 seconds or 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So kind of hedge my bets there. But that's based on the fact that I think it might be a 5 forward power play for a lot of the year, or at least for a good chunk here at the beginning. So that said, I mean, it could easily go the other way. I think Clark he's the guy that makes the most sense out there. He should have it, right? He's the offensive defenseman. He can facilitate. It might be time to move on from these kind of slower guys, like even Kopitar, which I was talking about. But like you said, Doughty, prideful guy. He's got Olympic aspirations. He wants to be out there doing things. That said, too, he's a team guy. He's absolutely a team guy. And I could see him, no problem. I could actually see Doughty doing that. Like, no, Clark, you take it. I'll focus on penalty killing, still playing my, buku minutes that he does. So all that to say, I think Doughty's going to have more power play time on ice at the end of the year over Clark.
All right. Let's get into the projections then. Quentin Byfield at the top. So I did put this as the top line. You look at the time on ice, Quentin Byfield has now exceeded Anze Kopitar in terms of even strength time on ice. Kopitar may still draw some certain matchups here and there, which you may want to quibble on who's the true 1C based on that. But in terms of just raw time on ice, it's Quentin Byfield now. So I have put this as the top line in the projections here. For me, I've got him for 24 goals, 41 assists, 65 points. You've got him for 23 goals, 39 assists, 62 points. Not too far off for either of us. It's a decent profile for Byfield here. I have him for 176 shots, 80 hits, 34 blocks. Nothing too crazy. This is just under 20 minutes total time on ice here, and with 3 minutes on the power play. But honestly, he hasn't really taken over a power play either. He hasn't shown that
Yep.
he can be the guy that it runs through. Talked about Fiala being that focal point on the power play. Maybe that changes a little bit and they do intentionally try to make Byfield a bit more of the trigger man on that power play, whether it be to unleash his shot. He has a great shot. He doesn't use it nearly as much as I think anybody would like. But what's your take on Byfield here? Do you think that we're starting to top out on Byfield? It seems like every year we expect him to break out to a new level and it hasn't quite happened yet. What do you think is maybe holding him back?
I mean, for me at this point, it's his power play deployment, right? Like, and like you said, he's never been that guy. So it's not like all of a sudden Byfield goes on power play one and we're like, oh, bang, here's 25 power play points right off the top, right?
Right.
I think it's going to be a bit of a slow burn. In 23-24, he had 14 power play points. I think that's a good place to start, right? Because if he had that again this year, he would have a 61 point season instead of a 54 point season if he was able to replicate what he did last year on the power play. So I think let's get him up to like 15 power play points. I think that's sort of how he kind of maintains his value. And we're chipping away, right? It's a 23-year-old player. I think he's starting to get the keys. Like you said, we got Kopitar in the way, right? Is this the year where he truly passes the torch, where this is the number one line? And I absolutely agree with you that it should be, because Byfield, Fiala, and then Alex Laferriere. Like, sheesh. That is a line that's very well constructed. That is extremely offensive. And I think we can, move guys like Kopitar down the lineup and to play a little bit of a different role. So all that to say, I do think Byfield's going to take another step, but I don't think it's going to be massive. It's just an extremely talented player. I'd like to see him shoot a little bit more, and I think he's going to get more time on the power play. What did you get him for power play points, Nate?
I got him for 16 power play points.
Yeah, me too. That's great, right? Then
Yeah.
I think that's it. I've got him for 62 points. You've got him for
65.
65. Yeah. So that's really it. Like, production on the power play, I think there's a lot of room left to grow there. Like, if he really does carve out a role on power play 1, we could see 20 power play points, right? So you and I think, have had a nice conservative projection based on what we've seen so far.
All right, let's talk about the next one up, Kevin Fiala. I have him for 32 goals, 38 assists, 70 points. You have him for 31 goals, 42 assists, 73 points. Again, we are pretty tight on Kevin Fiala. I have him for 26 power play points, 244 shots. That's pretty nice stuff for what we like to look at for any kind of league, really, that'll play. So we like that. The problem with Fiala, right, is the system. I think he's just kind of terribly fit for the system in general. He wants to be a greyhound, and he's kind of being made into just this plotting guy who has to check all the boxes in the defensive zone before he can take off. It feels a little bit like a guy who could be, what William Nylander is in Toronto, where you hear Craig Berube talk about William Nylander, and he's like, I don't talk to him. Like, he does his thing, and I get the other guys to take care of the other stuff, and Nylander's hanging out by the blue line, because when he gets that breakaway, it's in the back of the net every time. And I feel like maybe Fiala's not really getting that same leash in Los Angeles, but if you go under the hood, especially on all 3 zones on the microstat stuff with Kevin Fiala, it is just screaming blue all the way to the right. Everything is like 95th plus percentile. It all looks fantastic. And so that's the thing with Fiala for me is, can we get a different coach in here just for fantasy purposes? I want to see what Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere would look like under, a Paul Maurice or even like a Joel Quenneville if he had come to LA this year instead of going to Anaheim. If that had somehow aligned, like, what would this look like if there had been almost any other coach, quite honestly, than Jim Hiller to coach Kevin Fiala? I think we could be talking about him as a point per game player.
Absolutely. I'm so high on Fiala, and I really like the comparison you made with Nylander there. That is all we need. We don't need maybe a new coach. We need Hiller to be like, you go do what you do, and we'll deal with that on the back end, right? Because this guy's one of the most creative players out there, right? He's certainly the best offensive player on LA. Like, it's not even a question. So if they're looking for more goals, I think you got to lean into Fiala a little bit, right? And he's an amazing power play performer. I've got him for 27 power play points this upcoming year, even on a power play that's probably, going to be middle of the pack or even less than that, right? Fiala does stuff. Everything runs through him, but let the man cook. Like, that's what we need. And if we're saying that Quinton Byfield is going to be elevated up the lineup, more time on ice than Kopitar, then, Fiala should get that too, right? Let's start prioritizing this line. They got to do something a little bit different. And I think that's absolutely makes a lot of sense to me with Fiala. This guy's such a stud. Like, on any other team, he's pushing a point per game, no question.
Right, the third member of that line is Alex Laferriere. Started off the season on a tear and then really cooled off towards the back end and then couldn't buy a goal for a good chunk of the last part of the year. But I have him for 22 goals, 21 assists, 43 points. You have him for 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points. So 5.4 points difference in our projections here. A little bit there, but nothing too crazy. There's a couple of things I really like about Laferriere. The shots, close to 200 shots in my projections, and that's with 16 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice, no power play 1. I have him for 133 hits, 45 blocks. He is going to be quite valuable, honestly, in Bangers Cats, especially any deeper formats. So there's that kind of just off the top. And then there is the question of, if Byfield takes that step this year, if Fiala gets a little bit more rain this year, then Laferriere, just by proximity, should be in the 50-point conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might just be that simple, right? Access to an improved Byfield, like a slightly improved Byfield, and an offensive juggernaut in Kevin Fiala, right? That this is a great place to be. This guy he's kind of like that Gabe Vilardi on this line, right? Gabe Vilardi, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, right? He's the Vilardi, although I would argue that he's more dynamic than Velarde, right? This
Yep.
this guy rushes the puck pretty damn well. He beefs out of control. He's great at hitting. He's a great forechecker, big time rush offense guy. So I just think there's a lot to like, and he doesn't need power play one to be relevant, right? He only had 4 power play points last year. He scored
Yep.
42 points. That's a 45-point pace. So I just think it's going to be some natural development for Alex Laferriere, right? He needs to. And it's funny, actually, I just did an interview with Louis Boulet. We're going to release that on Sunday. But this is one of the players that we talked about as a player of interest because of what he brings to the table. He's a 200-foot player. He's just inefficient, right? He's been really inefficient to this point of his career. Well, I mean, if he can stick out the whole season with Kevin Fiala and Byfield and they're cooking, he's going to receive more high danger passes. He's going to be finishing at a higher rate. And that's without power play time. Like, I also think that Alex Laferriere would be the next man up on the power play, depending on what they do, right? Obviously, the power play is a little bit muddled, but he spent some time on power play one this past season, and he's had some success there. So I like the player, and I like the peripheral floor. It's just it's a player of interest for me, and a guy that I'm certainly looking to stream, if not pick up with one of my last picks.
Yeah, it's worth noting, like, Laferriere has never really been a high percentage converter, even in college. Like, a lot of guys who make it to the NHL, they're all like 18, 19% shooters in college.
Mhm.
Ferrier down in like the 12, 13% range. So he's
Just a
never really
chucker,
been
right?
that guy. But yeah, that doesn't stop him from racking up counting stats, shots, all the rest of it. And yeah, it wouldn't be that shocking for him to be more efficient alongside what could be an improved Byfield and Kevin Fiala. Moving on to what we'll call the second line here, Anze Kopitar, I have for 18 goals, 45 assists, 63 points. You have for 20 goals, 44 assists, 64 points. So we're pretty tight here, just a little difference in how we're distributing the goals and assists. Again, this is a spot where it feels like, what do you win if you're right with Anze Kopitar? Like, if he sticks around at this level, then, great. You got a 60-point player with, I have 19 power play points. I have one for less than 100 shots. Like, his shots have
Yeah.
really, really just totally cratered at this point. Yeah, it just feels like, even if I win, like, wow, like, I got a guy that I did end up holding on my team for most, if not all of the year, but realistically, he was not much better than what I could have had on the waivers at any given moment.
It's hard. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't with players like this, right? Because he's still going to get opportunity and he knows what to do with that opportunity. And like, to muddy it up even further, he just popped off in the playoffs, 9 points in 6 games. He played
Hmm.
21 and a half minutes, 38 years old, be damned. He doesn't care. He's out there playing like a young Blake Creamer out on the ice, just zipping around, the ageless one. But yeah, I mean, it's going to fall off eventually, right? This is crazy efficiency. Like, even in the playoffs, he shot 25%. It's just the older he gets, the more efficient he gets. And that could be kind of a shout out to him for his level of intelligence in terms of
Yeah.
hockey, right? This guy knows how to play hockey. He's, he's a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's a great, one of the best defensive players ever to do it. But it's going to fall off at some point here. I just can't see how it's going to continue. Like, the Kings have playoff aspirations. They have Stanley Cup aspirations. They have a window here. And I think for them to do that, this guy needs to take a back seat a little bit and let some of the other young offensive players cook. So we've talked about it before too. When you got a guy that doesn't shoot, he doesn't get scoring chances, right? And now all of a sudden he's not scoring at that efficient rate. What are you left with? Right.
Yeah.
You're left with a guy like out in a cardio session, right? Tooting right in your face while your league mates are smashing you. So I do love the player as a guy, like, and his career, but I'm not
Mhm.
interested at all this year in Kopitar for fantasy.
Yeah, I think even within his own team here, like, if you are in the market just for, say, for a generic forward later in your drafts and you're looking at Kopitar next to Laferriere, like, Laferriere is the guy who could exceed expectations. He will have the counting stats with the shots and the hits. You kind of feel confident about that. But you take a shot on a guy who actually has some upside versus a guy like Kopitar, who realistically we're projecting him at the top of what he's capable of at this point in his career. We expect that to be pretty much the case again this year, but every year there's a greater and greater chance that it all just kind of goes away and he gets demoted even further down the lineup. Next up, Andrei Kuzmenko, 22 goals, 22 assists, 44 points for me, 22 goals, 28 assists, 50 points for you, Blake. So this one, we actually do have the largest difference, 6.0 points higher for Blake than me. And it's a good spot. If he is able to maintain this role on the Kopitar Kempe line, if he is able to maintain a role on the power play, there's no doubt that it's a good spot. Again, it's a little bit of the same formula as Kopitar. This is a high efficiency, low volume type of player. I have him for 120 shots. I have him with 2.5 minutes power play time. So that is baking in some likelihood that he's not there all year long. And of course, with Kuzmenko, we have to mention, this is going to be another tour of duty with a new team, and he hasn't really lasted in any of these recent tours of duty. So, what's your case for Kuzmenko? We know about the head of hair, but what can we expect for the fantasy projection?
Well, you can expect that they're going to have to up their budget for bananas. All right. Yeah. And Pepsi. Okay. For the Kings, they got to have them locked and loaded on the bench. That's Kuzmenko's go-to snack, right? You dip the banana in the Pepsi and then you eat that, right?
It's disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. Big Cozy, we love the man. I think he's landed in a good spot, but what a weird ride to get there. I mean, he's been on 4 teams. So obviously there's something about this player that doesn't translate to the NHL level. And it's going to take a certain coach to really kind of lean in and be like, like we talked about with Fiala, like, okay, here's your skill set. Like, I'm putting you in a situation to do what your skill set is, right? And to me, it sort of appeared that they were doing that in LA, and they need a player like this. They need a guy that can facilitate offense. Like Kuzi does that. He's very good offensively, albeit efficient, right? Like we just talked about with Kopitar. But I like what I saw with the power play deployment in the playoffs. He was getting 18 minutes. He got 6 points in 6 games. This all bodes really well. So I think he's like that power play is really going to be the key to keeping Kuzmenko's numbers up. Like I got him for 50 points, 15 power play points. That seems reasonable to me. You know what I mean? Like if you look at what he was able to do last year in a year where he played for 3 different teams, he still paced for 46 points, right? And one of those teams was playing for, Tortorella with the Philadelphia Flyers. So how? I mean, I don't know. He still got a 46-point pace. So I don't feel like 49 is too crazy, but I could absolutely see him getting like just kind of cratering, like he said, and getting 42 and kind of getting just the 11-minute treatment on the team if Jim Hiller kind of becomes sick of his shenanigans, his lack of defense, that's for sure.
Yeah. It does feel like they found a spot for him there with the Kopitar and Kempe duo. Those two guys are pretty much elite, defensive forwards. And so Kuzmenko can kind of look a little lost out there, and nobody might notice that at times. So you mentioned 15 power play points. I have him for 14.5. So we're pretty tight there. So most of this difference is at even strength. I'm just curious. I have him for 13 minutes, even strength time on ice. What did you get him for there?
13, like 13-10 or something like that. Okay. So right around
not
there.
Much different. So you do have them a little bit more efficient than I am for 63% IPP, 27.5 shots for per 60, and a 9.5 on ice shooting percentage.
Yeah, it's the on ice shooting percentage where we're really different there. I got him for 11.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, Kopitar's still efficient. Kempe's a great sniper, and Kuzi's efficient as well. So I feel like it wouldn't surprise me for that to be a little bit higher. Like that's kind of on the high side. I think yours is kind of a little bit on the lower side, but I think it's all going to come out in the wash, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I generally don't have this big of a difference between players that I project to be on the same line. Like I have Kopitar at 11.5 and Kempe actually at 12, which is one of the higher on ice shooting percentages that I'll have on a player at even strength. And so to have Kuzmenko at 9.5 is partially just me saying I kind of don't think he will stay on that line all year long. And then when he goes to the bottom 6 somewhere, he probably goes to the 4th line, and then the on ice shooting percentage might get real bad. So that's where I'm at on Kuzmenko and why I'm a little lower than Blake, but I can definitely see if he can make good on it, then definitely there will be some upside for fantasy purposes. Let's finally get to Kempe here, rather. 36 goals, 37 assists, 73 points for me, 35 goals for you, 38 assists, 73 points again. So we are pretty tight on the point projection. 249 shots for me, 113 hits. He does all that. Really, really solid player, no matter what your format for fantasy. You feel like you can take Kempe to the bank and feel good about it.
Yeah, this is one of those guys that kind of gets by me a little bit in drafts because he's just boring. He's kind of an old faithful at his age, which is 29. But like, yeah, I'm like, oh, I could get someone more exciting than Kempe. But don't pass this man up. Like he does so much. He's a beefer. So 100 hits last year. I've got him projected for more than that this year. And he had a down year on the power play, right? We said
Yep.
LA power play was 27th overall. He only had 18 power play points after having 27 the year before, right?
Hmm.
And I think he was more efficient at even strength. So even if that efficiency comes down a little bit at even strength, I think the power play efficiency is going to go up, right? Because hopefully they do kind of what we've talked about, right? Like let's focus on getting more offensive players in there, right? Brant Clark, Quentin Byfield. Let's see what these guys can do. And I bet we'll get him back up to, in the 20s somewhere. Like I got him for 22 power play points, which I think is probably light as well. So I think there's a little bit of meat on the bone with Kempe, but again, this is just a guy that you know what you're getting. If he's lacks in one area, he's going to pick it up in another area, and we're going to be looking at a 70-point player.
Yep, definitely one of the more bankable guys. A really nice option too, if you do end up taking a player that's a little bit of a swing for whatever reason, you're feeling a little bit wishy-washy about
Yeah.
your, Jack Hughes in the first round or something like that. If you feel kind of a little bit unsteady with that pick, then maybe Kempe is the guy for you because you feel like you can take that production to the bank and take your upside swings elsewhere. Let's move to the third line here. Philip Deneau, I have for 13 goals, 29 assists, 42 points. You have him for 14 goals, 28 assists, 42 points. Warren Foegele, I have for 22 goals, 19 assists, 41 points. You have for 22 goals, 22 assists, rounding down to 43 points. Trevor Moore, for me, 23 goals, 21 assists, 44 points. For you, 24 goals, 22 assists, and 46 points. So you can see all in this low 40s range for all three of these players. Do you have a favorite from this group of third line players here, Blake?
I don't know. This is going to be your question that you're asking yourself in season where you're like, okay, LA's got a good schedule. Who am I picking up to stream? All
Yeah.
three of these guys are going to be available. I want to say Fogel. I really like what he brings to the table in terms of micro stats. And, I feel like there's a little bit untapped there in Warren Fogel, but he's not moving off the third line. This is a great third line. Honestly, they had their Corsi for percentage last year. Even strength was almost 55%. They're caving people in. This is an excellent third line. This is exactly what you want. This is one of those reasons why the Kings have such an amazing defensive environment. These guys are able to move the puck in transition, force turnovers, and they're decent rushers too. Trevor Moore is a good rusher, although
Yeah.
he's the ultimate chucker, right? And Warren
Yeah.
Fogel's a really good rusher as well. And Philip Deneau is great defensive presence, and he's really good at puck retrievals and breaking the puck out. So it's a well-constructed third line. It's just I think if I had to choose, I'd go Warren Foegele. I think Foegele has a bit more peripherally that he can bring to the table. You're going to get some good shots from Trevor Moore, and Deneau is just one of those guys. He'll go on these massive cold streaks, and then at the end of the year, he'll have like 45 points. Like, how the hell did that even happen? Like he just gets it done. He's a good player. Fun fact, Philip Deneau in that big year, 22-23, he actually got 20 power play points. That's the year
Nice.
Arvidsson got like 25 on the
Yeah.
second unit there. So and I'm never forgetting about Arvidsson getting 25 power play points. I'm going to take that to the grave. But Philip Deneau is right there as well. He can do that if he gets moved up, but whatever. Nothing super exciting here. What do you think about these three guys?
Yeah, I think basically Deneau is the deeper league streamer. He doesn't shoot as much. They all hit around a hit per game is what I've got each of them for. Deneau does block a bit more. I have him for 69 blocks, which is pretty nice. So he'll do that if that's your flavor in your league. Maybe your ESPN format where the blocks are insanely highly weighted. Philip
Nice.
Deneau
All right.
has a little
There we
bit
go.
more weight there. Warren Foegele and Trevor Moore, yeah, kind of look like two different versions of the same person. If you look at their statistical profiles side by side, they're both going to close in on 200 shots. They're both going to have about a hit per game, both going to have about half a block per game, and about half a point per game. So it really does feel like
Exciting
50.
stuff.
Yeah, really two sides of the same coin with those two guys. So I'd be happy to have either on any given week in my leagues if LA has a good schedule. Last up here, let's talk about the D. True Doughty has to be the top one. 11 goals, 31 assists, 42 points for me. 9 goals, 33 assists, also 42 points for you, Blake. Really, I think we know what Doughty can be. It's a bigger question what he will be after the situation last year with the significant leg injury. He had been kind of an Iron Man for basically the entirety of his career up to that point. Pretty hard to avoid the injury he did sustain, though. He's not a big time shooter. Like I have him for 118 shots, 75 hits, so even just under a hit per game, and then 123 blocks, which is pretty good, but nothing like insane. And that's with 24 minutes time on ice. So I'm questioning the real upside scenario for Doughty. Even when he was getting power play one for the last number of years, like the upside was like 50 points. And so now that that's far from a sure thing, and I think the betting odds would have it well below even that he would even be on a power play one, even if they ran the top power play with the defenseman, as we're talking about. You have Brant Clark there. So I'm left with this scenario where I'm starting to feel a little bit about Doughty the same way I feel about Kopitar is what do you win if you win?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just where are you going to draft him, right? Because there is value in Doughty because he plays a boatload of minutes, power play or not. This guy's going to be up around the 24-minute mark, which has value, right? And if you look at historically, you're like, yeah, he's playing 24, 25 minutes, and he was relatively efficient offensively. Like, yes, I agree with you. That's going to go down, but I don't think it's going to fall off the map. This is still a guy that, what we saw last year was a player coming back from injury, and he still paced for 46 points, right? That said, he did have 62% power play share, 6 assists on the power play. I do think that goes away to some degree here. I mean, I've got Doughty for 14 power play points, which, yeah, that would be the lowest he's had since 21-22, where, that was an injury shortened season as well. So, yeah, it's like you said, what do you win? I think when you truly win, if you draft Doughty, is if you're getting him as like your 4th or 5th defenseman, and it's more of a floor play at that point. But yeah, I think his days of number 1 power play guy are over.
Yeah, it is. It is really tough to see the upside at this point in his career, but at the same time, you're right. There's definitely a floor here that feels pretty bankable given, we talked about the organizational inertia. Even if he is kind of terrible, like they don't have anybody who's
Yeah.
going to just step in and like, are they going to play Cody Cece top pair minutes? I
What
really
was
don't
that
think that's going
signing?
to
I
happen.
mean, my God.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it again too much. I kind of tore
I know.
this LA offseason apart. In when we were talking about the free agent signings, it was truly brutal from my perspective. I don't know how Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci are supposed to be the answer to stopping McDavid and Draisaitl, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The one thing that I do like about those signings and moving on from Jordan Spence, which again I don't agree with the move, but the one thing I like about it is for fantasy here with Brant Clark right defense. They add Cody Ceci, but theoretically, if Clark is up to it and if Hiller can realize that Brant Clark wins all his minutes pretty handily and should be elevated up the lineup to see what he can do in a second pair role behind Doughty, then I think we might be in a spot where we actually get something really valuable out of Brant Clark this year, along with a power play 1 role. So I have Brant Clark for 10 goals, 30 assists, 40 points. You have him for 10 goals, 32 assists, 42 points. That for me is with 2 minutes and 15 seconds average time on ice on the power play, not a power play 1 role. I do have him for 13 power play points, but I can see a scenario wherein when he is on the top power play, and if it is starting to click a little bit more than we have seen in years past, that this could actually be a really valuable role for Brant Clark. This is also with 18 minutes, 15 seconds total time on ice. So again, second pair all season long, that ticks up more towards the 20 minute a night mark. And now you're really pushing 50 plus point pace.
Yeah, he's a poster child for like this sheltered minute defenseman that like a per minute beast for fantasy. He's amazing at generating offense, shots, and chances. He's in the 90th percentile in both of those according to all 3 zones. He's a great puck rushing defenseman. I keep thinking about that highlight that he had last year where he was in the offensive zone. He took a puck off the wall and just kind of like did a spinorama with the puck and then
Yeah.
passed it off to some guy for a one-timer. I was like, what the hell? I mean, that's this guy has it in the bag, right? It's just, yeah, we need minutes. And I do think that he's going to get more. I've projected him for over 19 minutes average time on ice. I feel like, I'm not the coach and I don't know the X's and O's. Like he did well in his minutes last year, even defensively, right? He was
Yeah.
in the 95th percentile on entry chance prevention, which is kind of a good metric to judge defensemen. That
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm sure there was a lot of offensive zone starts, right? It's not like he was playing big defensive minutes. He was out there with Joel Edmondson as well, which is like, okay. But I think how does he do with bigger minutes, more defensive type minutes? I think that's really going to be the question. And that's what Jim Hiller's sort of been avoiding. So I just don't think he's going to be able to avoid it as much this upcoming season. And we're going to see what this guy can do. I got him for 14 power play points, 10 goals. Like this guy's a stud. He just needs to round out his game.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the natural stat trick stuff here. 54% Corsi for percentage, just under 53% scoring chance for percentage. When he was on the ice, things were going in the right direction for the Los Angeles Kings, and I don't think Cody Ceci is going to be the guy to really displace him. So I am a little bit interested in what that could look like for Brandt Clarke. All right, top 3 targets, Blake, give it to me.
Give it to me, Neil. All right.
We're going to do that every single
I know.
episode.
Yeah, I got to say it. I love that you keep saying it because I will keep saying it, right? That's how we do. These are tent poles, all right? Just of the pod that everyone enjoys. Am I right? Give me a heck yeah in the comments. All right, that's fine. I'm taking Kevin Fiala as my number 1. I think he's going on like 5th round, 4th, 5th, 6th round. Kevin Fiala, my God. I'm into that. I think there's, a lot of ceiling with that player, but I think I'm banking on 70 points. Book it. Adrian Kempe next, just for that solid floor we talked about. And then Quentin Byfield. I think this is a center only that you can get a lot later that I think is probably good for 60 points. So I feel good about that. And then honorable mention to Brandt Clarke for the reasons we just mentioned.
Yeah, for me, number 1 is going to be Brandt Clarke. I just think he has by far the most potential to vastly outperform his ADP when it gets into the season. We've seen it with other defensemen when they finally do get the opportunity. If they are that caliber, then, the learning actually happens and they click, and then it's all downhill from there, and they can actually sustain those 20 plus minutes a night. And if that does happen for Brandt Clarke, I do think that 50 plus point pace is inevitable. So for that reason, Brandt Clarke is my number 1 here. Quentin Byfield, number 2. I do think like the all 3 zones shows it a little bit too. Like the stuff is all there for Quentin Byfield. Maybe a full year alongside Kevin Fiala. Maybe if Laferriere, who is my number 3, also takes a bit of a step, then they all kind of take one more step together. Maybe Jim Hiller has learned some things and does loosen the reins on offense a little bit for this line specifically in some less matchup minutes.
Right.
I can just tell myself a lot of stories about how this is actually the year that Quentin Byfield takes that step, and you're not actually paying for it. I think there has been a lot of hype for Byfield in the past, and I don't think that hype is quite as big a story this year now that we've kind of seen the higher minutes for Byfield, and that still hasn't really come through. But as we talked about, with just 16 power play points projected, what if that he is a featured member of that power play and all of a sudden he's popping for 26? That's 10 points on top, right off the top. 75-point Quentin Byfield, and now we're laughing. Alex Laferriere, the last one here, just because, again, especially in deeper leagues, your Bangers Cats leagues, I think he has a baseline of value and he could exceed that by taking another step this year. It wouldn't be shocking, especially given what we saw from him early in the year last year. I do want to shout out Fiala. Like, I love this player. I've been really down on Fiala just because of the situation, because it does feel like Jim Hiller just kind of hates him a little bit. Right. Probably not intentionally, but just by virtue of what he's asking him to do. But I'd never want to be out on a player with talent. That's something you'll hear me talk about time and time again on this podcast, is I never want to be out on talent. And so maybe I would try to find a way to fit Fiala in here because I don't want to be out. I do think that this 70 points is an absolute baseline, and he does have potential for more. All right, next up, Minnesota Wild. Let's get into it. They only really lose Frederick Gaudreau off this team, so not a huge subtraction by any standard. Key additions, Vladimir Tarasenko is really the only free agent. I guess he wasn't a free agent. They did make a small trade there to acquire him from Detroit. They had the cap room to do so and figured they might be able to get some more out of him than Detroit was able to. And then the rookies here, Zeev Buium and Danila Yurov, are potentially the 2 that will have the biggest impact on the lineup this year, and I'm pretty excited to see each of those this season. Coaching status, Jay Hines is back, and that's a good thing for fantasy, even though we will never be able to remember what his first name actually is.
Jesus.
That's probably it. That's probably right. The good thing about Jay Hines is that he is predictable and he elevates his starts. He puts them in positions to succeed. He plays Kaprizov for ungodly amounts of minutes every single night, and we like that for fantasy purposes. Takes on Jay Hines that you want to bring to the table, Blake?
You bet your sweet bippy, buddy. I think we're going to see, I agree with everything you said there. Really good thing for fantasy. I think we know what to expect. But last year, he really had to adapt because you spend half the season without a superstar in Kirill Kaprizov, like you can't play the same style. And I think that's what we saw. We saw an adjustment to a really low event kind of hockey style where they had to grind it out and really rely on Philip Gustafsson to kind of stop bullets in his teeth, which he did. And, they got Cap back for the playoffs, but I don't think it was full Cap. You never go full Cap. All right. But I just think I liked. I think he's a good coach just in that way as well. Like he was able to adjust and keep the boat afloat while they were dealing with a massive injury to Cap. So I think there's a chance that the Wild could be wildly different this upcoming season, at least in terms of offense. Okay.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Let's move over to the power play. Locked in Kaprizov, Boldy, and Joel Eriksson Ek. I think these guys' roles are pretty unique, and I think they're pretty locked in. Zuccarello, the Zucchini Man, almost a lock for me. The only thing that's in my mind here is as Zuccarello ages and potentially ages out of his kind of top power play role that he's had for quite a number of years now, could they feature Marco Rossi for trade bait at some point? Depends what they want to do there. I think there's at least a chance that they could feature Marco Rossi on this power play, especially if they run through a dry spell. I think Zuccarello might be the guy to come off. You got any thoughts on the Zucchini Man there, Blake?
I love it. Nate, I need a little bit more enthusiasm. The Zucchini Man. When Nate does the Zucchini Man, he goes, the Zucchini Man. He says it like that. And I don't mind that, actually. That's nice. That's understated. It's like a simply stated card, when you just give someone a blank card, right? And it just says happy birthday, right? That's kind of your version of the Zucchini Man. And I appreciate that.
It's kind of like when I do a deep V, I undo the top button. And when you do a deep V, it's like all the way to the belly button.
Yeah, exactly. All the way to the penis. All right. That's kind of the way I do there. Sorry. That's awful. Never mind. We'll cut that out. I don't remember the question. Right. The Zucchini Man. Yeah. I think if anyone's coming off for Rossi, it's going to be Zuccarello. No question. I think the other guys are locked and loaded. They have a good thing going there. But I do think that Zuccarello is going to spend most of the time there. Rossi could have a cup of coffee, but I don't know. This all said, I've seen crazier things too. Like we know sort of the discourse with Marco Rossi and the team this offseason. There was a lot of trade rumors. He wasn't happy with the way he was deployed in the playoffs, and rightfully so. What the hell? Maybe that's one thing against Jay Hines, buddy. What the hell were you doing? You're tooting in Rossi's face here. This is a young player that you kind of need, in my opinion. So that said, I do think he'll spend a cup of coffee there, but it'll be mostly Zuccarello.
Right, and lastly on this power play topic, Faber, Spurgeon, Bouillon. Who's the power play one quarterback, Blake?
I think to start the year, I think we're going to see Zeev, one of the all-time names, Zeev Bouillon. That is excellent. And Zane Parekh too. Like these two names are two of the best names I've ever heard. Why aren't more people's names starting with the letter Z? Like we got to do that. Yeah, I don't know, but Zeev, you got a chance to name your kid Zeev. You do it. All right. So Zeev Bouillon, we salute you, but I think he'll get the start. I think it will be a short leash though, right? Like this, again, this is a team with playoff aspirations, potentially cup aspirations, right? They're a well-constructed team. So I think that'll be good. We could see sort of a Brandt Clark experience, right? The Brandt Clark experience for Zeev Bouillon. And I think if he's moved off, I think it's going to be Spurgeon, not Faber, that jumps to the top power play. I think they like what Spurgeon brings there more as a shooter. Faber just never... He doesn't look good out there, right? It doesn't exactly fit. Faber is a guy that's just gotten points through just being on the ice and not so much power play wise. So I think it'll be Bouillon, Spurgeon, Faber, book it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Bouillon, he's tailor-made for this role. It's what his calling card should be in the NHL. I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to try him there. They obviously have not enjoyed the the results they've gotten from either Spurgeon or Faber over the last number of years. They've ping-ponged back and forth a few times, tried some other stuff. They've tried Kalen Addison, it was for a while, right?
Yeah.
They're trying that out. Like, I think
That's a deep cut right there.
They are very open to trying something new on the top power play. So I think Bouillon will get every opportunity to be that player, and I think he's fully capable of grabbing a hold of that and running with it. Let's get into the projections here. Joel Eriksson Ek, Jeek off the top, 27 goals, 30 assists, 57 points for me, 31 goals, 29 assists, 60 points for you, Blake. Obviously, we know he brings the peripherals, 256 shots, 149 hits, 64 blocks for me. Yeah, that is going to play no matter what your format is.
That'll damn well play. Oh, buddy, I'm such a fan of this guy. I just wish he was more efficient, right? Like it's something you can wish happens, but it's not like it's going to happen, right? This guy does everything so well. Like you look at individual chance and individual shot generation, he balls out. This guy's amazing. But shooting percentage last year, 10. Guy, what are you doing? But I want to shout this man out. He had a 4-goal game on April 9th against San Jose, helped me win a league.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Jeek, for your service. This man's incredible. So obviously his value is much higher in banger leagues, but he had injuries last year.
Yeah.
So we have to take that into account. By all intents and purposes, I've heard he's having a good offseason here. So we get a healthy Jeek starting the year. You got a healthy Cap, and they're going to be playing together. I think that we can expect a little bit more out of Joel Eriksson Ek, and I've projected him as such, right? 60-point projection, 22 power play points, playing over 20 minutes a night. This is another one of those really rock-solid guys you can get in the mushy middle of your drafts that I feel like you're never going to hate that pick. Unless he gets injured, you're probably looking at 60 points.
Yep. Tend to agree. One of these guys, one of the many, many reasons to fade center in your drafts and grab one of these players a little later on, especially if he is able to line up for most of the season next to Kirill Kaprizov. I have for 52 goals, 57 assists, 109 points. You have him for 49 goals, 62 assists, and 111 points. I don't think it's any secret. We're pretty high on Kaprizov around here. I think last year I had him projected for 115 points. I had him in 3 out of 4 leagues, and that was going swimmingly until he had the injury that cost him basically the rest of the year. Tried to come back for a bit, couldn't make it work, and then basically rested until the playoffs to come back at that point. I mean, Kaprizov does it all. 303 shots is what I have him projected for. That'll play 31 power play points, 22 minutes average time on ice. He is always going to be out there. He's uber efficient in every facet of the game. He is a true, undoubted superstar.
I love a superstar. You ever
You
see
like
that
that,
Saturday
eh?
Night Live where she smells her own armpits? Superstar. You ever see that? That's
I haven't, no.
damn. Oh my God. Well, that just makes me look like a raving lunatic. But I don't know. Again, shout out in the comments if you ever seen the Superstar movie with Molly Shannon. All right. It's certified rotten on 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. So there you go. But Cap, what a beauty. I'm excited about fully healthy Cap here. Obviously, we're chincing points here. You got him for 109. I got him for 111. Big deal. But the thing that I love about Cap, it's like he's a better version of Fiala, much better. But also Coach Jay Hines is basically giving him the keys. Like he lets him go out there and improvise, right? And Cap is good enough to do that. And I think it just fits really well into what the system is here in Minnesota. Like this guy's able to be creative and really, puck possession, drive play, and he's got good players to play with, right? Eventually, one of these seasons, Matt Boldy is going to figure out how to put the puck in the net, right, in an efficient way, right? But if he doesn't play with Boldy, like you got Zuccarello, who's great with high danger passes, so that's going to keep Cap's goal totals up. Right. And you got a really good defensive presence in Joel Eriksson Ek that can kind of make up for any miscues or giveaways that might happen due to kind of Cap's offensive prowess. So it's a nicely constructed line, depending like whether he's with Zuccarello or Boldy on the right side there. I'm just such a big fan of this player. And I don't know, besides Kucherov, like I don't know if one player is more important to his team. I think Cap is right up there in the top 2 or 3 in the league in terms of importance to his team.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think really the biggest question is where people are going to take him this year. I've seen some hesitation, even in our Discord, about the injuries that he's
Right.
sustained over the last number of years. And can we really trust Kirill Kaprizov to give us a full season of hockey? To me, you definitely can. Like, yeah, okay, he plays 41 games this last season, plays half the season, basically a single injury that ends up keeping him out the whole season. The year before, he played 75 games. The year before that, it was 67. So, yeah, he missed 15 games there. The year before that, it was 81 games. And then you're into the COVID years. So, like, I just don't see what like there's not a major injury narrative at play here for me. He has one injury basically that everyone is scared of apparently, and that's just not going to be the case for me. I'm not in the mood to predict injuries at any given time, but this one in particular is a little bit baffling for me. I don't
Yeah.
know why anyone would be worried about that with Kaprizov. He came back in the playoffs, scored 5 goals, 9 points in 6 games. Like he was pretty ready
It's
to
good to
go,
go.
and I don't think that's going to change going into the year here.
I don't know. Like can you trust anybody to play 82 games?
Yeah.
The answer is no, right? Like that's we get this conversation so much, and I get it, right? When we're trying to project things, but the reason we're not in the business of projecting injuries is because they're random. Like, you can go in and look at the last 3 seasons and be like, oh, he's missed this game, this game, this game, divide by 3. He's going to miss X amount of games per year. It's like, why? Why would he miss those games? Like, and also on the other end, what about these guys that play through injuries? Do you think they're more valuable for fantasy or less valuable for fantasy?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're like, why did so-and-so play so crappy this year? It's like, well, he had an injury that he was dealing with for like 42 games, but he toughed it out. It's like, we can't, there's no point, right? We have to look at what's in front of us, make the best guess, and just keep the slate clean. Granted, there are a couple guys we've talked about too that you're like, okay, it's an injury to the same body part over and over again. Like, yeah, that's someone I'll probably, in a tiebreak situation, I'll be like, no, I'm not going to take this person because I am a little bit concerned there. But for Cap, what are we doing? No, get this man in your squad ASAP.
Love that. Matt Zuccarello, his longtime line mate there on the top line, 22 goals, 42 assists, 64 points for me, 20 goals, 44 assists, also 64 points for you, Blake. The ageless wonder, the Zucchini man here. And yeah, realistically, I don't have a good reason to say he can't do it again. He maybe showed some minor signs of slowing down last year, so maybe there's a chance that he does. But again, unless one of these rookies really takes over, I mean, maybe Tarasenko, the Kaprizov countryman, can get up there and do something. I mean, you're really grasping at straws to say that there's a really big reason to get Kaprizov a new line mate, in my opinion. I think you try to let Boldy drive a second line and you try to let Kaprizov drive a first line in most cases. Maybe, yeah, like, I mean, you're late in the game and you need a goal. Yeah, you're going to play Boldy and Kaprizov together the same way. In Edmonton, they play McDavid and Draisaitl together, right? Like, that's going to happen for sure. But as a base, I expect Zuccarello to have much the same role this year.
Yep. I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, fun fact, everybody, if you dig in on some NHL Edge stats for Matt Zuccarello, and they do that at all 3 zones when they put out these player cards that we reference all the time, he's 0% in skating speed. 0 percentile for Matt Zuccarello. So yeah, he's skating like a zucchini out there, like a zucchini with little legs and little tiny skates. That's what Matt Zuccarello's doing, but he's a very intelligent player. There's no question about that. He's got chemistry with Cap. And also, if he's not on the Cap line, like, I think there's a world where Tarasenko plays a little bit with Kaprizov as well, but that means Zuccarello is playing with Matt Boldy. Right. So it's a great place to be. I don't see him getting bounced out of the top 6. And I think, like we've talked about already, power play 1 is pretty locked and loaded for him. What did you get Zuccarello for power play points? Because I got him for 23.
I got him for 20 on the dot.
Yeah. So floor solid right there. I mean, if he gets bounced off the power play, yeah. Now sure. we're not as excited about the zucchini man. Now we're looking at like a 50 to 55 point player, most likely.
Yep. Agreed there. Let's move on to the second line then. Marco Rossi here, 21 goals, 32 assists, 53 points for me. 20 goals, 32 assists, 52 points for you. Again, very close here on Rossi. Basically, the trend down from last year is just the expected less role this year. Joel Eriksson Ek missed some time last year. Kaprizov obviously missed a big chunk of time, and Rossi was the major benefactor. Wow, nice. Can't say words. He got the most minutes when those guys were out. He was the primary beneficiary. That's probably the word I was going for.
It all works out.
All of it works out in the end, but I don't see that for him this year unless there are some injuries again, in which case he probably is the next guy up in most of those cases. And yeah, there is a chance that they do try to feature him if they are really trying to move on from him. They don't see him in the way that I think a good chunk of the league probably does view him as a pretty solid 2C down the line. Still a young player. Anyway, I'm not that worried about Marco Rossi in terms of like the floor falling out, but at the same time, I don't think that the ceiling is going to be super high here. I don't see him like, taking over Joel Eriksson X minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see how that would happen. It's not a great story, honestly, and it makes Rossi a little bit difficult to project because we're not projecting what the player actually is. It's like we don't know what his role is going to be. Like, yeah, famously, they gave him 11 minutes average time on ice in the playoffs. 11:08 is what he averaged in 6 games in the playoffs. That makes no sense. I don't get it, right? And I feel like Bill Guerin, the GM here at Minnesota, he's got kind of an old school mentality. Like, we need 6 foot like beefers out there getting to biz. It's like, not always.
Hmm.
Marco Rossi, yeah, he's a small guy. He's 5'9", with skates on. Okay. But who cares? This guy is pretty damn elite when it comes to generating chances, facilitating offense for his teammates, and he stepped up the lineup pretty damn well. In my opinion, like without Cap, he was part of the reason why they were able to stay afloat, right? 16
Yeah.
power play points last year, pretty damn nice. But yeah, I don't think we can. There's no way we can project him this way. And I also think that there's a really good chance he gets traded, right? I don't think they like him here. So maybe they do a sign and trade. Maybe they sign him, like a little bridge deal here, and they're looking to get rid of him. And who the heck knows? But I don't understand the Marco Rossi downturn here in Minnesota. But I think their loss is going to be someone else's gain eventually.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Also, like, he's what, 5'9"? So is Matt Zuccarello. He's listed at 5'8". So
Oh,
I don't
damn.
know.
Okay. All right. I didn't check up. The Zucchini Man's 5'8". Why did I not know this? I think there are zucchinis that big. Now I'm getting the full, like the little legs, the skates, a 5-foot zucchini, helmet on top, right, and the Z carved in his chest, right. That's how
That's
Zuccarello gets
the
the biz.
That's the vision that we're looking for for sure. Let's move on to Matt Boldy here. 35 goals, 42 assists, 77-point projection for me. 34 goals, 46 assists, 80-point projection for you, Blake. This is a player that we've been high on for a good chunk of time now. I have him for 280 shots and, 48 hits, 57 blocks. Nothing necessarily to write home about, but a player that's going to get over 20 minutes a night. He's going to get a lot of opportunity. He commands a huge percentage of the offense when he is on the ice, and he generates a lot of that for himself without any help. Like, yeah, especially last year, right? Like, it was Rossi. Sometimes he had Zuccarello on his line. Sometimes he had random guys up from the fourth line on his line
Right.
when Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov were both out. Rossi is a decent piece and theoretically could work well with Boldy, as with Boldy being the shooter and Rossi being a bit more of the distributor. But either way, I'm pretty confident in Boldy's baseline ability to create this level of offense for himself. The question really is there another gear left in the tank?
Yeah, there has to be. He's 24, right? Like, he's a chucker. I hate this about Matt Boldy. Like, or he's at the very least inefficient, right? He generates a lot of chances, so maybe chucker isn't the right term for him because his shots are good chances as well, but he's not burying them, right? And I've predicted he gets a little bit better next year. Again, just marginally better. I've got an 80-point projection here. He got 73 last year. I see that whether he's either going to play with Cap or he's going to play on the second line there with Rossi. And there are benefits to both. Obviously, when he's playing with Kaprizov, he's getting those high danger passes. He's getting the benefit of Cap's creativity, right? Making space where guys are going to Cap, and all of a sudden Boldy, who's an pretty elite shooter, he's got a great shot. He's an amazing skater. He's going to be wide open, like burying the puck. So I think his shooting percentage goes up in that case. And if he's on the second line, it's like he's not seeing the top defensive line against his line.
Yeah.
Right. So Cap is getting that. So now Boldy maybe he can eat a little bit against the second unit. When Cap was out, it was Boldy. Boldy was the go-to guy, and he was seeing all the hardest minutes against the best defensive players on the other team. So I think just having Cap healthy all season is going to benefit Boldy big time. I think his shot percentage is going to go up. He had 10 on the dot last year. I've got him for 12.2 this year, 34 goals, 80 points. I feel good about that. And just a beast on the power play as well. 26 power play points. It's a guy I'm going to be in on again, but yeah, his value is a little bit nuked in the drafts that I've seen as well. Like, people are taking him, and granted, this was best ball, but they're taking him in the third round. I think probably because he's left wing only in that format. But I mean, third round Boldy, that's a little spicy for me. I like fourth round Boldy. I like early fourth, mid fourth. That feels like nice value for him. What about you?
Yeah, it's hard to argue. I think that there's a lot of scenarios in which he returns at least that kind of value. if I just go by my base projections here, I have him as the 30th ranked skater, so that includes defenders. So maybe you take a few defenders over him, but also he, in pretty much every format, is going to have left wing and right wing eligibility, and so he's a little bit more valuable for that. And you might take him over, I have Mark Scheifele to score, a couple more fantasy points than him, but are you going to take Scheifele over Boldy? Probably not, because Scheifele's center only. You could say the same for a guy like Braden Point, maybe even a Sidney Crosby, who might score 10 more points than Boldy, but he's center only, and is that as valuable as a left wing, right wing guy? So I can see the appeal of Matt Boldy in the third round. I agree with you. I'd like to get him. I mean, I'd like to get him
Yeah,
in the
even
18th
later. Come
round.
on.
But I think that he probably is pretty appropriately valued in that kind of middle of the third round. It's just, yeah, we've grown accustomed
Yeah,
to
we're so used to
being
it.
head over heels from, in the fifth round or whatever it was last year. And this year, maybe that value has gone away a little bit. But I still want to be in on a player that I view as having a ton of talent. Vladimir Tarasenko projects as the third member of the second line here for me. 18 goals, 22 assists, 40 points. Blake has him for 20 goals, 23 assists, and 43 points. I think there are some scenarios in which, yeah, you can paint yourself the Russian countryman narrative that he goes and plays with Kaprizov at points throughout the
Yep.
season, and he could be quite valuable, obviously, in that role. Still hits a bit, almost a hit per game is what I have him for at 15 minutes average time on ice. So if he's getting a bit more average time on ice, you could pencil him in for about a hit per game. So there are some scenarios for me in which Tarasenko does have a little bit of a bounce back. I was a little bit pleasantly surprised that, his underlying stats weren't terrible when I dug in Detroit, but it did seem like he was a little bit of fish out of water in that scenario, was never really going to be in the top six. And then what are you really doing with a guy like Tarasenko? So he's going to get that opportunity in Minnesota. And I think that there's at least a chance that he returns some value this year.
Yep, I think there's a role for him here. He's one of these guys now. He's a role player. Come in, do your role, right? And his role is not defense. So I think he needs to be, yeah, up there, like playing with good players for sure on that second line, like Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi, Tarasenko. I don't mind that. Like that's really good. Obviously, Boldy's going to be the rusher there, like bringing the puck in. Tarasenko's still got a good shot. Like we have to acknowledge that, and he hasn't been given very much opportunities, certainly in Detroit, right? And then Marco Rossi, we talked about what we like about him, so it's a nice spot for him to be. Like you said, the hits are still there, and I think he'll have a cup of coffee with Cap. That's hard to say. Cup of coffee with Cap. That's the name of our sister podcast. We're going to be doing just all Kaprizov interviews all the time. Really boring. Yeah, you don't want to hear about that. Anyways, yeah, that back to Tarasenko. I think, yeah, he's landed in a good spot. 43 points, a little bit of time on the power play when they're looking to change things up. It's better for him here than in Detroit, and I think he'll be kind of a good streamer for this team.
Yep, agree with that there. Moving on to the third line, Ryan Hartman is a guy that you might see on your waiver wire and think, yeah, Minnesota's got a good schedule. I could pick him up for this week. World-class dingus, 20 goals, 15 assists, 34 points for me with the round down there. 20 goals, 18 assists, 38 points for you, Blake. I think he's just a solid streamer. A guy, yeah, maybe he'll get you some penalty minutes if that's something that you're counting in your league as well. You got anything to add on Hartman?
Not much, but it's worth knowing that Hartman, if elevated up the lineup, is valuable, right? He's going to be a third liner this year, but if he finds his way up the lineup, this is a guy that under the hood looks pretty good. Okay. He's really good at generating chances, shots for his teammates. He hits, he slices, he dices, he juliennes, right? He does it all. And he's got your PIMs locked and loaded if you need that. So just something to be aware of. Hartman looks good under the hood. So just keep an eye on his deployment. If he somehow finds his way up to the top line randomly, or even in the top six, like he's got 65 points before in a season, and that was playing with Cap. So just a player of interest. Nothing more than that for me at this point, and a good streamer.
Yep. Another reason you might be into Minnesota players just in general this year is the influx of young players. So Liam Ogren and Danila Yurov are two guys who are probably going to get the chance to grab a spot and run with it in the lineup this year. Ogren had 24 games last year, only generated 5 points, but didn't have much of a role. Now he might get a chance to elevate himself up the lineup. He played 41 games for the Iowa Wild, the AHL team there, and had 37 points in 41 games there. So really nice showing in the AHL. And so there is some upside here with this player. Danila Yurov coming over from the KHL. He had 49 points in 62 games in 2023-24. Then kind of fell off this past year, 25 points in 46 games. This past year, I had heard some things that maybe it's because he kind of fell out of favor. Yeah,
Mhm.
he had announced that he was going to go to the NHL. I think it was the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast. They were kind of talking about that. So maybe there was some behind the scenes stuff as to why his stats fell off a little bit this past year in the KHL, but definitely a guy who has produced in the KHL at a young age. So we like that potential there. And so if anything, this kind of just gives me a little bit more of a feeling of security in a guy like Boldy. You know, if these other players do go down to injury, then somebody could actually come up from the bottom six who actually has some offensive upside, and it might not be as big a fall off as it might normally be, or such as it was last year when Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek were out. So let's move on to the defense. I did a quick projection for Jonas Brodin. He is probably going to miss some time. So this is the 82 game projection, 6 goals, 19 assists, 25 points. It looks like he is going to miss some time to start the year. Don't know exactly how much. My actual projections have him for 70 games played. It's just a guess at this point. We'll probably know more once we get into September here. But Brock Faber, we both did a projection for. I have him for 8 goals, 24 assists, 32 points. You have him for 8 goals, 22 assists, 30 points. So we're a little bit in between the past couple of years here for Brock Faber. I think he's a world-class defensive defenseman at the top of his game. I think he did struggle a little bit last year,
Mhm.
and it's going to be interesting what we get out of him this year. But either way, he's going to be leaned on for big minutes in Minnesota.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. This is a guy I wanted to be excited about for fantasy. Even last year, I think I picked him up kind of at the bottom of one of these defensive tiers because I'm like, well, I need a power play one guy. And he was kind of slated to do that. And yeah, it just kind of backfired big time. I mean, he's not that guy. And I've come to that realization now, but he's a minute munching defenseman, no problem. And I think last year wasn't the best showing for any of the Minnesota Wild because of the cap injury, right? And the adjustments that Jay Hines had to do on the fly. So I think, again, coming into the season fully healthy with cap, I think we're going to see better, even defensive metrics from Brock Faber and, the full complement of minutes here. Too bad he doesn't hit. This guy's a dancing boy, 34 hits in 78 games. You got to check out this guy's headshot too. He's got the glasses. I love that. All right. This guy's being dubbed Poindexter. All right. I love that stuff. He looks good. Actually, I just had to get glasses recently. So I can relate to Brock Faber here. And I feel like he's, we're together on this, right? I mean, when you turn 45, I guess your lenses get a bit squished, and then I had to get the glasses. I don't know, but I made sure to get the glasses with the straight across, like kind of those serial killer looking glasses. You know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
like I want to get some tape in the middle there too. Just lean
Mhm.
in, you know what I mean? And I
Yep.
think Brock Faber should do the same.
All right. Well, with that in mind, let's continue on. I did a quick projection for Jacob Middleton. I got him for 8 goals, 16 assists, 25 points with the roundup there. Really, the only interest for Jacob Middleton is the 127 hits and 185 blocks that I have him projected for. That will definitely play in just about any league. Let's move on to Jared Spurgeon, though. I have him for 9 goals, 29 assists, 38 points. You have him for 9 goals, 27 assists, 36 points. Spurgeon, obviously pretty dependent on power play time. I have him for 2 minutes on the power play, so definitely not taking over the full power play role, but might get in there on occasion is kind of the way that I'm leaning there. 130 blocks, which is solid, but only 62 hits, 134 shots. So nothing too crazy on that front. You want to add anything on Spurgeon, Blake?
Spurgeon. Oh, buddy, no. What are you doing? Not here, not now. One thing I will say about Jared Spurgeon, just digging on Faber and now looking at Spurgeon, the defensive metrics are way, way better for Jared Spurgeon. He actually had a good year defensively. And granted, he's not playing the same tough minutes that Faber
Yeah.
is. So I think that's probably a key piece. But in Spurgeon's minutes, he played pretty damn well. And he's really good at puck retrievals and breaking the puck out. And there's a chance he gets power play one. So it's not a guy you should just completely avoid, right? Like this
Yep.
is a guy that could have some value, especially maybe like you're in best balls or whatever, and you're looking for a seventh defenseman. Like I'd
Yep.
I'd take a ride with Jared Spurgeon. He's going to block a ton as well, which is really valuable in that format. So yeah, this guy's a good back end defenseman piece if you're in a deep league, that's for sure.
All right, and lastly here's Yves Bouillon, 9 goals, 33 assists, 42 points from me, 7 goals, 31 assists, 38 points for you. This is actually the biggest difference of anybody on Minnesota, 3.8 points. So
Oh my.
definitely Minnesota is a team that we are pretty consistent on between the two of us here. But Z Bouillon is just a guy like thinking about Brock Faber and what went wrong there last year with the big projections that everybody had on him. I think realistically, we just got a bit out of over our skis with him. A guy that played 3 years for the University of Minnesota. His best season was 27 points in 38 games his junior year. Like, was never this big time scorer. But when you go over and you look at Z Bouillon, now you're looking at a guy who breaks in to the University of Denver. He breaks in as a 17-year-old. His birthday is in December 7th. He'll turn 20 on December 7th this year. And he's got 2 NCHC seasons under his belt. He scores 50 points in 42 games in his first season, 48 points in 41 games in his second season. Elite level offensive stuff from Z Bouillon early in his career there. Even if that doesn't all translate, I think this is a 50-point role if it continues all year long. I think there's a chance that with Brodin out that he really grabs a hold of a second pair role as well. If he can prove that he's up to the challenge, maybe he is playing, with a Jared Spurgeon on a second pair role, and Spurgeon's, captaincy and longtime veteran standing can kind of lend some stability to that side of the pair, and Z Bouillon can do his thing on the other side, and they can be pretty effective together. I think that's a real potential run out for him, especially early in the year with Brodin out. When Brodin's back, maybe he is bumped back down in terms of the even strength units and even strength minutes rather, but I think that this is a player with a world of potential, and I want to be in on him.
Yeah, I think we look at what they've been doing there in Minnesota for the past 2 seasons with their power play. They're trying to force people on. They tried to force Brock Faber on there. Well, Faber and Yves Bouillon, 2 completely different players, right?
Yeah.
We got a guy that's offensively minded. I mean, he's just his contribution to the offense is going to be huge, right? It's just the minutes, and I love that take there. Put him out there with Jared Spurgeon, right? A pretty damn good defensive defenseman. Like, one thing that I hope they sort of shelter Z Bouillon from doing is retrieving the puck. Like, let your partner get that, you get open, and then he can start zipping those passes up or run it up himself, right? But he's not the puck retrieval guy, and I don't think he ever will be. Like, he's not the biggest guy in the world either. I mean, he's 6 foot, 183 according to elite prospects. That's fine, right? Now he's going to develop more, like turning 20. My God.
Yeah.
What the hell? All right. He's not going to get any of my references, but he's got the coolest name, one of the coolest names I've ever heard. But yeah, I think, like you said, this is a 50-point role just on this team. And then you throw the individual talent of Yves Bouillon in here. If he can run with it, like, we could be looking at a really nice situation. What's ceiling? What do you think ceiling Yves Bouillon is this year if everything goes right and he's able to kind of lock down that role and play some good minutes at even strength?
I think he could probably push 55 to 60, probably doesn't exceed 60, but that would be absolute ceiling if he grabs the role right from day one and they just are forced to play this guy at even strength and on the top power play all year long. I think that's a possibility, and that's a possibility you have to take note of. The one difference with Z Bouillon that I will say, and the reason I'm probably actually going to draft him higher than some of the other guys that we've talked about, there's a lot of these defense late guys that I'm actually quite into. We've talked about Zane Parekh already in this series. We've talked about Alexander Nikishin already in this series, but Yves Bouillon has by far the clearest path to an early season role at least, and then it's really up to the player. If you want to bet on talent, this guy has talent and he has the projected role right there in front of him. All he has to do is grab it, and I think it's really possible that he does. All right, Blake, top 3 targets. Let's have it.
Let's have it, Neil. Damn, that doesn't even work. Neil, let's have it. I got Kaprizov as my number 1. It kind of just piggybacking on that conversation we had about maybe some trepidation of picking Cap early. Like, I'm into it. I'll take him at 6. I feel really good about that. So I'm going Cap there. Zuccarello, number 2, just again, a guy you can get way late, right wing, which is sometimes a scarce position. So I'm happy to take Zuccarello there with the power play floor as well. And then Z Bouillon as my number 3 for all the reasons you just mentioned. I think there is a ceiling case, and it's not that crazy. You know what I mean? 60 points Yves Bouillon. I mean, that's, well, like we said, it's absolute ceiling, but 50 points Yves Bouillon, it's not that crazy, right? It's not the way we projected it because of the variance, but it could happen.
Yep. absolutely could happen. And for that reason, he is my number one target on this team. Easily the biggest upside. You're not going to have to pay a premium pick for him. You're going to get him in that range where you're probably dropping a lot of the guys you pick in that range anyway. And you're going to know pretty soon with Steve Boyum if he's getting that role in training camp in the first few games of the season. And if he's not, then you can just let him go and keep him on the watch list for later. And if he is, then you're loving life. So for that reason, big time into Z Boyum. Kirill Kaprizov, number 2 for me. Again, it seems like he's going to slip more towards the back end of the first in a lot of drafts. Maybe not in Apples and Ginos drafts because
Right.
of how high we are on him collectively here, but in a lot of places, I think he'll slip more towards the back end of the first, and he should be, at the latest, the 7 spot for me in every single draft. And Matt Boldy, number 3, I do agree that he's going a little bit higher in some of the drafts we've seen so far in the mid third round, sometimes in that range. Honestly, I still think you probably take him there in a lot of spots. I think the value with the left wing, right wing, the value where you see this as kind of a floor scenario, the value I talked about where I feel a lot more secure in the floor of the player because of the Danila Yurovs and the Liam Ogrins coming into this lineup. There is some actual offensive potential down the lineup that could be elevated if in a break glass in case of emergency scenario, and that would lend even more floor to Matt Boldy's potential. And I do agree that there is still that case where one of these years he goes off for a 16% shooting percentage, and now we're talking about more than a point per game, 40 goal Matt Boldy, and you're loving life. All right, we reached the midway point here. If you've made it this far, click the link in the description. Join the Discord community. We're doing APL mocks. What's the APL, you may ask? Well, sign up for the Patreon, and you too can join the Apples and Ginos Patron League. $2 a month all year long. As long as you are a member in good standing there, you can play in the Apples and Ginos Patron League all year long. It's a tiered league system using the Apples and Ginos point system. We are going to try to put you in a league with players of your relative skill caliber as closely as we can so that everybody has the most fun possible. It's going to be the first year we do this. I'm sure there will be some growing pains, but we are going to have a great time, and the goalies will go super late, guaranteed. Also, you can click the link in the description to sign up for the free newsletter. That'll be getting going this year. Probably see the first one sometime in September here, and you'll get a taste for what that might look like. Just some extra content that lends itself a little bit better to the written form that will be sent into your inbox once a week. Like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever you can do. That would really help us out. Blake, we got to get into it. You ready for Montreal?
I'm ready, buddy. Let's get to biz.
All right, let's start off here with the key departures. I mean, not really key when you break it down. Christian Dvorak, Joel Armia, David Savard, some minutes being munched by some of these players, but definitely nothing we're too worried about for fantasy purposes. The additions, however, Montreal got to be a candidate. Nashville was the team last year that won the offseason. I think Montreal is probably the consensus won the offseason team this year. Noah Dobson via trade. Ivan Demidov joins the team at the end of the year and looks absolutely electric in limited showings. And Zachary Bolduc they get for Logan Mailloux. Nice little trade there to acquire Bolduc, who was really hot down the stretch for St. Louis, who was just on a world-ending tear at the time as well. But he was actually a pretty big part of that and factors in the middle six there for Montreal this year. So, I mean, what do you got to say, Blake? These are obviously some pretty key additions.
Absolutely. I mean, picking up Dobson, that's great. That's great for reality. We're going to talk about what it means for fantasy because, yeah, it's not just cut and dry there. But I mean, Demidov, like we're adding a legit top 6 player in here, like legit. Like he has no business in the bottom 6 pretty much for probably his entire career. He's that type of player, and there's some potential on the power play. So I like that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here and how this is going to affect the team because this team, they were dead last in the league in expected goals against. This defensive environment was terrible. So it's not going to be like a Nashville situation where it's like, wow, you had all these great signings and they really underperformed. It's like, wow, you had all these great signings and it can't get much worse defensively, right? So, you sign a guy like Noah Dobson, that's going to raise the floor up for this team defensively. So I'm excited to see what happens here with Montreal.
For sure. Coaching status, Martin St. Louis is back as coach. Probably a make or break year for him as the coach, and he gets them across the finish line into the playoffs here. I think the biggest thing we can say for Martin St. Louis is he will definitely play his top guys. We love that for fantasy purposes. Really, the most interesting piece of St. Louis as a coach for fantasy is what he did with Lane Hudson this past year. Really just let him cook almost from day one. Didn't hold him back even when the defensive stats were not the greatest. He was letting him learn on the job. The part I'm not too sure about is, Montreal didn't necessarily have playoff aspirations at the beginning of the year, and then they kind of like found themselves in the
Mhm.
position towards the back end of the year. So maybe there was a little bit of a, we don't have anything to lose here by playing Lane Hudson, and it's best for his development to just throw him in because he is whatever the mental makeup is there. You just let him do his thing and figure it out on the go. So the question that I have for you, Blake, is will Martin St. Louis do for Ivan Demidov what he did for Lane Hudson?
I don't see why not. Like, go to the well again. Obviously, like they know what they're doing in terms of their draft picks. Like Lane Hudson was an absolute smash last year, so I'd
Yep.
love to see that. And Demidov, like I would maybe be a little bit different if there wasn't a pathway to some good offensive minutes, but there is. Right, there's a spot on power play 1 potentially, and he's in the top 6. So what are we doing? Yeah, I think it's going to be he's going to get all the offensive minutes that he needs to do something for fantasy, and we'll see how he is defensively, right? Because that's not why you have a guy like Demidov in there. But hopefully, some of his potential line mates can pick up the slack and let this kid get the biz.
Love that. Let's talk about that power play. 3 spots I see as secure: Suzuki, Caulfield, Hudson. That would leave Slavkovsky, Demidov, Patrick Laine, and Noah Dobson all contending for 2 remaining spots. First off, do you agree with the top 3? And if so, who are the other 2, Blake?
Yep, 100% agree with Suzuki, Caulfield, and Hudson. I think that makes sense. RIP to Mike Matheson's power play aspirations. Oh God, he's not even gonna know what it's like being out there with one man short on the other team. He doesn't know what's going on. But yeah, in terms of the other 2, yeah, this is where we're really gonna earn our money here in the offseason, like trying to predict what they're gonna do. And I don't know, because Line to me is a guy that should be on power play 1. Obviously, he had an amazingly efficient season on the power play, but he's good at one thing, but he's not just good, he's elite at one thing, and it's that cross ice one-timer. The guy's one of the best in the league at that, and he popped the hell off. And I've seen some off-season training videos, which matter fully. They're 100% valuable, of Line just doing stuff. Like I like what I'm hearing from Patrick Laine in the offseason, and we'll talk about him in a bit. But that said, I didn't project him that way. I feel like you got to put Demidov on there after what we saw last year. I think start him out there, Hudson, and then it's really Slavkovsky. I would say Laine over Slavkovsky, but it doesn't make sense in terms of the construction of the power play. So
Right.
that's why I would bump Laine down to power play 2. Slav is going to be that net front guy, board battles, getting the puck to these guys to pass it around. So that's how I'm seeing it to start. But I mean, they have a lot of cooks in this kitchen too, and they could do a bunch of different things, can't they?
Yeah, they definitely can. The worry that I have is that they actually do end up splitting these units a little bit and trying to do some 1A, 1B stuff, doing, the St. Louis route or some of these other teams that have actually had some success with that. It's pretty unusual, but it has happened. And I could see that happening here. You have Noah Dobson, who's a pretty elite power play 1 quarterback in his own right. And as we have it projected here, he's not going to see that with Lane Hudson being the centerpiece.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think there are a lot of different scenarios here, and you just have to kind of keep all that variance in your mind as you're approaching this. I think Slavkovsky does have the most unique profile of all these guys, and so his spot is a little bit more secure to me in the way I'm thinking about it, but
Yep.
I could be convinced that they just do some other alignment entirely and let players rotate around and try to get very high movement kind of power play and have players crossing the net front instead of, parking a guy like Slavkovsky up front. I can see it a lot of ways, but it is definitely one of the power plays in the most flux across the league for me at this moment. Let's talk about the projections here. Nick Suzuki, I have for 27 goals, 53 assists, 80 points. You have him for 30 goals, 48 assists, 78 points. I thought I'd never see the day. I am the highest on Nick Suzuki's projection for this year.
we used to talk so much Yang on this man, and he was like Kopitar, like when he first started out. Like he's gotten
Mhm.
a lot better, but there was always something under the hood that maybe I just wasn't seeing with this player. But obviously he's landed in an amazing spot. He runs this kind of offense, right? He's really good at what he does. Big time facilitator, and he's got an elite shooter with Cole Caulfield that he plays. And then he's got Slavkovsky on the other end, which he's a great forechecker, getting the puck to these guys. One of the things I'd like to see them do more is just drive play a little bit more at 5-on-5. I feel like they do a lot of really good work at on the power play, right? But it's 5-on-5 where I don't know. I'm just not seeing it. It's hard to put my finger on, but Montreal, like, they made the playoffs against all odds. Like, offensively, it wasn't a wagon of a team. They were, decently efficient. And then the power play was okay as well. It was just this big season that Sam Montembeault had that was keeping them in these games, and they were able to convert when they needed to. So that said, Nick Suzuki, I've got him for like 79 points. I think it's pretty much a lock. He's a guy that gets a ton of minutes as well, and I don't see that going away.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point about Montreal as a team and their efficiency. They're the worst team to make the playoffs in both Corsi for percentage and scoring chance for percentage at even strength. So they did kind of beat the odds there in that regard. Some of that is, just the way that they're playing. I don't want to take anything away from them. They were a higher percent shooting team, and I think that mostly sticks around. Like, I think one of the reasons Nick Suzuki has kind of flown under our radar a little bit here is because he is just that efficient of a player, and that was just a level up from him where we were seeing potential regression under the hood. So I think that, it is a case where sometimes that is the brand of player that will just kind of slip through our projection systems and stuff like that here. Now we're starting to see an established baseline with Suzuki. Now we're starting to see the talent around him be built up, and so it's a lot easier to project him at this level. Cole Caulfield, the other headline member, I would say, of this top line, I have him for 38 goals, 26 assists, 64 points. You have him for 35 goals, 30 assists, 65 points. I think Caulfield is a really intriguing player, a little bit hard to figure out. Like, the IPP on the power play was way down last year. I think a lot of that was due to Line kind of occupying that spot where Caulfield would like to be most of the time. So I think actually a fair bit of Caulfield's potential for this year is a little bit wrapped up in what do they do with Line on this power play. That's a little bit of a scary place to be, because then you're just relying on a lot of even strength efficiency. That being said, I do think Cole Caulfield is fully capable of being very efficient at even strength. He's a major shot producer. I have him for 263 shots. He will throw the body a little bit, like 57 hits. He's definitely not a dancing boy. You can't say that about Cole Caulfield. The big question for me is really the assist number here. I have him down at 26. It was kind of the way that his season went last year, and I'm not sure if he's going to develop into a better distributor, if we've seen that he is kind of the guy off puck more often than not, and they just will let Suzuki tote the puck all the time. That is a potential for me. Like, you see the high danger assists are not super high if you go through the all three zone stuff. That being said, like, the chance assists are decent up there. There is some good stuff for sure with Cole Caulfield under the hood, and so I don't think the final book has been written on him, but that's his path to being a point per game player. I think he easily can score 40 goals in a ceiling scenario. This is with only 19 power play points. If he establishes a top role and he gets those cross ice feeds from Suzuki and Hudson all year long, I could see him easily going in the mid 20s in power play points. But I really think that it's his distribution that will get him to that point per game threshold that could really see him take the next step in both fantasy and in real life.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, especially the part about the power play, right? There's definitely meat on the bone here. He should be a much better power play performer. So we have to see what they do with Line, because, he's the number one weapon on that unit if he's out there. And rightfully so, right? He's the best at that. But I do think he's going to be power play too. And I think Caulfield will see a bit of a bump on the power play. I've got him for 19 points, power play points rounded up. But I do think there's a little bit to be excited about at even strength as well, just with the addition of Noah Dobson, right? Like, if any of you have played hockey, right, you know how important it is that you have a defenseman that can put the puck on your stick, right? And Dobson is elite at that. He's elite at retrievals. He's really elite at zone exits. He's in the 95th percentile there. So last season, they only had really Mike Matheson and Lane Hudson that were able to do that, and they were playing together. So, the other two pairs, like it's kind of just chip the puck out and hope to try and get the puck overloaded on one side, then bring it in. No, right? We want like a guy like Caulfield, a guy like Suzuki, they need the puck in flow, right? They need to be skating. And I really think that Dobson is going to get the puck to these guys in better positions where they have speed, they can get in, do some damage, and we might see a little bit of a bump at even strength with that line in particular. So all that to say, yeah, I've got Caulfield for 65. I didn't go off the rails, right? But I feel like this is a guy with more potential, but I think it's going to come on the power play and that increase in even strength efficiency, like I just mentioned.
Next up, Juraj Slafkovsky. I have him for 19 goals, 36 assists for 55 points. You have him for 21 goals, 37 assists, 58 points. Really, I think the question is there another step from Slafkovsky here? I do think that that's possible. I'm not projecting that just here, just yet. I don't think we've seen necessarily the evidence of that. This year was supposed to be that year, and maybe it's just a year delayed. I don't want to be out on the player. Like 184 hits, I have him for 67 blocks. 144 shots is the biggest thing where I'd like to see him be a little bit more of a volume shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he needs top power play to really pop. I think he needs to take the next step in his development. Still a very young player, as we know. I think that there's potential here, but I'm not sure if we're going to get that fully realized 70 plus point version of Slavkovsky ever, or if he's going to live more in this 50 to 60 point range throughout the most of his career.
Yeah, he might not be that guy, and that's fine. Like every line needs a player like this, a guy that can go in, get the forecheck, get the puck to these players so they can get the biz. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we need to see some more shots, my guy. Like pick up the shot pace here. Again, I think you go back to just adding a player like Dobson on the back end. These guys are going to be in better positions. Hopefully, he'll be able to maybe up those shots a little bit. I think I predicted him as such. Also, last season was sort of the tale of two seasons for Slav in terms of his goal production, that's for sure. And I remember there was a clip, and I can't remember the exact thing he said, but he's like, I suck right now. I'm terrible. I gotta, like he was just really honest about his performance. And like after that, he just started kind of popping off a little bit in terms of the goal department, definitely more confidence anyway. And I do think his role on power play 1 is secure. So it's a player that, 58 points I've got him for, big time per riffs. It's crazy. Again, I think there's a really solid floor for Slafkovsky. I don't see him being moved off that line. And if he does, it's going to be to line 2, right? Which, I mean, in Montreal is not amazing, but still, he's going to get power play 1, top 6. I feel pretty confident about this projection.
All right, let's move to the second line. 13 goals, 17 assists, 30 points is my projection for the one and only Kirby Dach. You have him for 14 goals, 22 assists, 36 points. Super high on Kirby Dach. This is actually a player that we've gone back and forth on a little bit. I have just never seen it with Kirby Dach. A little bit is the style of player I'm just not that interested in, but a guy who's not really a big shot producer. He will hit, so he does have that going in his favor. But if there was a year for Kirby Dach to take a step, it would be this year where he does have potential line mates.
Yep. And I mean, we're not drafting Kirby Dach, so, take this all with a grain of salt. But yeah, this guy's coming off of two serious knee injuries, right? And I just read, this is the level that I'm into fantasy hockey. I just read a huge article on Kirby Dach's offseason progress, okay? And basically, he hasn't had a setback with his knee, but he might not be ready for the start of the season. So those are all red flags. Like, this guy's really not going to be fantasy relevant for us until probably halfway through the year when he gets his legs going. Right. But I do think long term, I don't mind this player. I feel like that they have a definite lack of a 2C here in Montreal, and Kirby Dach could do that. I mean, he's probably best served as a 3C, but on this team, he could be a 2C, and 2C on this team means Ivan Demidov. That's who you're playing with. And potentially Zach Bolduc or Patrick Laine, which are decent offensive players. So, I've only projected him for 36 points. I mean, he paced for 32 last year in a shortened year. So I don't think it's anything crazy. It's just a guy that he has a pathway to minutes at the very least. What he does with those minutes is kind of up for debate, right? And this is a 3rd overall draft pick too. I just don't ever see him kind of reaching those heights, but he could be a good role player for this team and potentially a guy that you stream every now and then.
Yep. I don't have too much to add. It's not a player I'm excited about. I would have to see something change about the profile for me to be interested, even as a streamer. Let's talk about Zach Bolduc, though. I have him for 24 goals, 15 assists, 39 points. You have him for 22 goals, 19 assists, 41 points. Player that was acquired from St. Louis at a pretty low price overall for prospect Logan Mailloux. I think that this is a decent spot for him where he does have a real potential to grab a top six role right from the start. Whether or not he does is definitely up to him, but we saw some really good signs there in St. Louis. He fit that mold that they like there in St. Louis under Jim Montgomery. I think he'll be asked to do a lot of the same things here in Montreal to become maybe a bit more realized version of what they wanted Josh Anderson to be when they acquired him.
Mhm.
I think that that's probably what they envision out of a guy like Zachary Bolduc. What's your take on Bolduc? Do you think that, again, he could set up, we talked about the St. Louis power play setup, he could be in a similar role if they do go with a 1A, 1B situation here too?
Yeah, I think that would be best case scenario for fantasy for Bolduc, right? Is if he had a minute 18 average power play time on ice last year. If he can get up around 2 minutes or something like that, which he was sort of getting towards the end of the year with St. Louis, now we're cooking, right? Like, what did I get him for power play time? Yeah, I got him for like a minute 40 or something like that. That's what I projected him for power play time on ice. And Bolduc, I gave him like 11 power play points, which is pretty nice,
Mm-hmm.
right? He got 12 last year with less time. And the St. Louis Blues. So, anyways, this is a guy that he's really good with his zone entries, right? So he can drive offense. Again, if he does get that second line there with Demidov, that's going to raise his profile as well, because this is a guy that he's really good at setting up in the zone, setting up chances. Well, Demidov's really good at that too, right? So I think he would see a lot more shots off of high danger passes if he's able to stick with Demidov. And again, like, it's a bit of a head scratcher. Like, how did they sign this guy? It doesn't even make sense. Like, he was a hot commodity at the end of the year. This guy got 14 points in his last 19 games. He was looking really good in St. Louis. So it's a really nice piece of business for Montreal. Kent Hughes there. And I think this is a guy that you'd probably be streaming sometime throughout the year. And he's a beefer as well. I projected him for 124 hits, 44 blocks. Pretty damn nice. And that's at like 14 and a half minutes.
Yep. I think if there was more of a role apparent there for Bolduc, like a top line or top power play role apparent, that we could be a lot more excited about this player given what he put on tape for us at the end of last year. All right, Ivan Demidov here. I have for 20 goals, 40 assists, 60 points. You have him for 25 goals, 34 assists, 59 points. I am pretty excited about Ivan Demidov here for this year. 18 power play points gets him to this projection for me. I think there's upside there up to like 25, which would put him closer to 70 points than 60 points here. I think that this is a player, I mean, you go back to the KHL, he scores 19 goals, 30 assists, 49 points in 65 games last year for Scott St. Petersburg. He did all that in 13 minutes, 45 seconds average time on ice. So a very minimal role, and he's absolutely popping off. You saw the highlights.
Yeah.
Montreal fans were not shy about sharing his KHL highlights throughout the year last year. So I saw plenty of them, and I'm into it, man. I think this player is the real deal. I think this is a player that could pop off immediately. I don't want to be out on these players. I don't want to be out on Ivan Demidov the year after being out on Lane Hudson under the exact same coach, as we've already discussed. I will be in on this player. I will wait to be proven wrong, but that's where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to add. This is a guy that profiles as a true superstar, right? Like a Matvey Michkov, a Connor Bedard. Like, Ivan Demidov is in that conversation, right? He's got the same kind of comparables. It's just ice time, really. Like, what kind of ice time is he going to get here? And like you said, Martin St. Louis, he had no problem putting Lane Hudson out there, who's a smaller guy, offensively minded, right? A guy that, you take the good with the bad, right? Lots of giveaways from Lane Hudson last year. Well, Demidov this year is going to have lots of giveaways, right? Because you trust a player, an offensive player, to trust his instincts and do that. And you live with those mistakes, right? And I think you have to do that with a player of this caliber. So 59 points, damn. I like, that's really reliant too on if he does get power play one. He absolutely deserves to be on power play one. He could stay there the whole year. It's just, will he get that? And I wasn't fully like all in on that. Like I think I projected him for 2.5 on the power play. So some shenanigans there with Line A and Dobson, who like there's some things that they could do, but in a perfect world, this guy gets the 3-minute treatment on the power play and just pops off. I could see 65 points.
Yeah, easily. I think he is one of the players that you want to highlight for a shot later in your drafts. As soon as it hits double-digit rounds, it is go time for Ivan Demidov for
Yep.
me. Player that I did not project, but you did. God bless you, Blake. You projected Alex Newhook for 14 goals, 15 assists, 29 points. His sister Abby Newhook was drafted to the PWHL this past year, and I wonder what it's like for Alex Newhook to be the second best player in his family. But what do you think about Newhook's potential this year?
Sheesh. Not much, obviously. Like what did I project him for?
29.
29 points. Dear God. I mean, this is not good. I mean, I'm glad he's playing. I'm glad he hasn't like flamed out of the NHL, right? Like he has a role. He's not like we're talking fantasy, right?
Yep.
Fantasy is where we're really like, no, this guy's absolutely useless, and he is, right? It doesn't mean he's not a good player in reality, not a great player, but he's got some bits and pieces, right? He does zone entries, he does that. He's also pretty damn good skater, very fast, and he forechecks well. So there's things that he does within this system that work. I mean, Montreal made the playoffs last year, and this guy was on the team. So, and he played 15 minutes average time on ice. So shout out to you, Alex Newhook. But for fantasy, I don't care who you put with this guy. Like he played with Line A and Doc last year. He played a little bit with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, and he scored to the tune of 26 points in 82 games. Okay, this guy was drafted 16th overall in 2019. Somebody might want a do-over on that one, but I don't know. I'm sure he's a nice person.
I'm sure he's a nice person as well. We've got to dog some players every once in a while. We spend most of our time talking him up. Patrick Laine, next up, I guess, is another player I might dog a little bit. This is the biggest difference in our projections. I have him for 19 goals, 24 assists, 43 points.
Yep.
You have him for 26 goals, 24 assists, 50 points, 6.9 points difference in our projections. Pretty nice, Blake. So defend this take for me. Why do you think Laine scores 26?
He'll probably score all 26 on the power play. Nothing at even strength. But I do buy into the narrative a little bit that he wasn't healthy last year, right? And when is he healthy, right? Like we've seen, 5, 6 straight seasons with injury concerns, different types of injuries for Laine. So, but again, this guy, we talk about not being out on a player with talent, and our trust is dwindling. In fact, it might not even exist for some people with Laine, but I still have a little bit of faith just seeing what he was able to do, like 15 power play goals last year. Of his 20 goals, 15 of them were on the power play. That's not going to happen again, but I do think that there is a chance he gets on the second line. Like if he's able to improve his play, right? Like actually, remember when he first got to Montreal, like the first couple games, remember him zipping around, like dangling people into the ice. And then he got injured in that really gross way. And it was just, I don't know, man. I felt like there was some hope with Patrick Laine, and he's only 27, right? He's got a lot to prove. He wants to get his career back on track. It's all mental stuff at this point, right? That I'm talking about, that I think Patrick Laine will improve on next year, coming into the season with a good attitude, fully healthy. He's an amazing goal scorer. This is a guy that should be getting 40 goals a year, right? It's not going to happen. I've got him projected for 26, right? But again, if they go to the 1A, 1B power play, I think Laine could get 10 power play goals right off the bat. Like he does that. He's elite at that. And if he gets access to Demidov as well, and whoever they put at the 2C, Alex Newhook, if he gets access to Alex Newhook, I mean, he'll pop the hell off, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's not a crazy projection for me. What do I have him for? 50 points. Maybe it's a little hot. Maybe it's a little hot projection on Patrick Laine, but I still believe in the player. They need to get some value out of him as well. Like he's the highest paid player on the team, or at the very least, or is that Dobson now? No, yeah, like
Dobson has more.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So Laine's making 8.7 million. Right. And he's got to know, what does he have? He's got a 10-team no trade list. So they're kind of committed to this guy, and they need to make it work. And if he's fully healthy, I don't see why they would. I really believe that he was somewhat injured last year in the playoffs, and they had a lot to lose, and they didn't want to put a less than 100% Patrick Laine out there for big minutes.
All right, fair enough. For myself,
Knew that was coming.
I think this is just going to be my Pierre-Luc Dubois from last year. Is going to be my Patrick Laine for this year. I just don't like these kind of mercurial players that are hard to project. I think that's just really tough for me to deal with. I'd rather take my swings elsewhere. Even when he's beating me, it feels like it'll come in spurts and I'll be like either like ecstatic about having him on my team or I'll be really sad about it and not even sure if I can drop him. And it's just a headache that I'm not willing to take when I don't think the potential reward is actually, like league winning level.
Right.
We both did do a projection for Brendan Gallagher, 18 goals, 19 assists, 37 points for me, 18 goals, 20 assists, 38 points for you. Gallagher, probably just a streamer level guy. He'll have some decent shots, about a hit per game, but probably not going to play above the third line much, if at all, this year. Let's get to the defense. Lane Hudson, 7 goals, 59 assists, 66 points for me. 8 goals, 58 assists, 66 points for you, Blake. Lane Hudson, I think, is terrific. I think the real question is here, can he add to the shot totals? I have him for 105 shots, just under half a hit per game, so not much there. I have him for 117 blocks, so that part's okay. The real problem for me with Lane Hudson is in any league that's counting these peripheral stats, he doesn't really do a whole lot of that, and so you're left with relying on some pretty elite points totals. He's totally capable of that, but the question is, can he do that over the long term?
Yeah, he reminds me very much of like an early career Quinn Hughes, right? Like nothing peripherally. Yeah, suspect defensively, right? But I mean, what he does well, he does insanely well. Like, and that's walk the line, that's dangle, the opposition, that's set up his teammates for really great chances. I'd love to see him shoot more. I don't think that's going to happen this year. You got a guy like Dobson in here. Matheson shoots pretty well, so they don't need Hudson to do that. But yeah, the numbers show out. I feel confident in this point projection. It's just, yeah, it's a little bit empty. It feels like empty calories. I remember Hughes back in the day. It's like he would slip to like the 5th round or, sometimes even the 6th. People are like, I'm not interested. It's like a defensive version of Robert Thomas, right? Like guy puts up elite points, but it's empty. So what if he stops putting up points, Lane Hudson? Now we're looking at a guy that's, he's not bringing anything to the table. So that's not always the best place to be for fantasy. But with the way that defensemen are being valued here in the drafts that I've seen, I think Hudson's probably going to go pretty high. And I don't think you're going to hate it. I think you're going to get a solid production floor from him. And I've projected him for 8 goals as well. I'd love to see that. I'm not sure if it happens. Well, did he get any goals on the power play? I don't even have Hudson's numbers up here, but what one power play goal and 26 power play points. So I'd love to see him shoot a bit more on the power play too. But I mean, Patrick Laine's got that covered, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, great player. I'm excited about the guy. And I think I could see him having sort of a Quinn Hughes type career where in like 4 or 5 years, we're talking about this guy in the Norris conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that comparison. That's actually one I was thinking of, is the path for Lane Hudson to more fantasy relevance. Obviously, he's relevant, but the question about whether he can be an elite fantasy defenseman, not just a point scoring defenseman in the league, is really centered around whether he can add to those shot totals. I think he can. I think that we've seen that template with Quinn Hughes, and that is a definite possible path. I don't know if it's the most likely. We also see other templates of defensemen that just don't shoot that much, and that's just not their game. So it remains to be seen with Lane Hudson, but you do still have that question because, I mean, we just saw his rookie season. It was elite. When you get these elite players, you don't want to rule out the possibility that they just improve something new about their game every single year, and that's super valuable. Noah Dobson next up, 12 goals, 37 assists, 49 points for me, 13 goals, 31 assists, 44 points for you. I think we both think the world of Dobson as a talent, big-time shot producer as well, big-time blocker. I think he's going to get a ton of even strength minutes there in Montreal, and he's going to be asked to carry the load as a true number 1 defenseman in most regards, just not the top power play.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I feel like looking back at my numbers here, I feel like I might be a little bit low on Dobson. I might revisit that just because I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone at even strength. But yeah, it's really the thing capping him here is lack of true power play 1 minutes. But if Lane Hudson goes down, Dobson's he's gonna eat. He's gonna go bonkers. Like now we're up in the 20 to 25 power play point pace for Dobson on the power play. So I think he reminds me of Devin Taves. It's a guy that I'd be drafting in and around like kind of that value for defensemen, but he shoots more. He shoots a lot more than Devin Taves. So that's a nice little bonus there. But yeah, it's a great signing in real life. It's going to stink a little bit for fantasy this year.
Right, and lastly, we did do projections for both Caden Gooley and Mike Matheson. I have Gooley for 8 goals, 17 assists, 25 points. You have him for 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points. The real attraction with Gooley is obviously the hits and blocks. Like, I have him for 152 hits, 208 blocks, massive stats there. Mike Matheson, I have for 7 goals, 29 assists, 36 points. You have him for 7 goals, 29 assists, and 35 points there. So yeah, again, not going to be exciting for Matheson. It's a different role for him than what we saw in years past, where he had the big power play role and was actually pretty good at it. But obviously now you have two pretty elite level power play quarterbacks, so I don't think he's even second on the list to get on the power play unit. I'm not excited about Matheson, but again, 143 shots, 169 blocks, definitely within the wheelhouse for Matheson here. Anything to add on those two, Blake?
Enough said. Shout out to the professor. The man's a legend. We got our one good season out of him, and I feel good about that.
All right, top 3 targets. Let me have it.
Let me have it, Neil. Oh, damn. This doesn't even work. All right.
Nah.
Number 1, Cole Caulfield. All right. I might change these. I did these last night after just having the discussion with you. I'm like, yeah, why am I putting Caulfield first? But I do think there's value there. Or sorry, I like the player, but I mean, where he's drafted is really going to be the key for Cole Caulfield. Lane Hudson. Obviously I want to get a 60-point defenseman. I was one of those guys drafting Quinn Hughes back in the day. Where I'm like, yeah, give me that offense, right? I'll find my periffs elsewhere. So I do like Lane Hudson at the value he's currently in. And then Demidov, you got to get a piece of this guy this year. Like, he has potential to pop the hell off. And I think he's probably a lock for the Calder.
Yeah, he is by far the betting favorite for the Calder, and yeah, I have him as my number 1 target as well. As I've mentioned, I think Demidov is lined up for a big season right out of the gate for Montreal, and aside from St. Louis, I don't know how many other coaches I'd want to be there for his rookie season. I think St. Louis will give him the keys and let him run things as much as he is able to, and I think he will be able to. I think the talent is that good. Sapkowski I have as my number 2 because the price is a lot more palatable this year than it was last year, and I still think the upside is pretty high, especially in your Barons Cats formats. And then Caulfield, love the shots. Want to see that distribution come up, but I think there's potential that it could. And if it does hit, then you're talking about a guy who does pretty much everything we could ask for in fantasy. And so I want to be in on a player like that for sure. Next up is Nashville. Let's get into it. Thomas Novak, Gustav Nyquist both leave the team. Key additions here. Michael Bunting joins the team last year. Eric Holla this offseason. Nicholas Hague and Nick Perbix joined the back end. Obviously, all kind of peripheral guys. They did most of their heavy hitting the previous offseason with Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea signings. I think that they're just banking on the same group being better.
I mean, I think that's a safe bet because they can't get worse. My God. And one thing I meant to mention this before. I like how you're calling these guys by their full names. You got Thomas Novak here, and you called Jacob Middleton. It's like you're angry at them and you're calling them down for dinner. Like, Thomas, get your biscuits downstairs and do it now. Sorry. Anyways, Thomas Novak. That's his actual name, so there's no issue here. But yeah, like, what are we doing here? There's these additions don't mean that much here, but this team obviously needs to figure out what the heck is going on. Last year was just a train wreck, and we'll get into it here, but nothing, departures, additions, like, we need to see what this team is going to do as is.
Right, let's get into the coaching. Andrew Brunette returns as head coach against all odds, one might say, after a horrendous season last year. Brunette has typically been a really good coach for fantasy purposes, really good chance generation numbers. The Preds were both bad and unlucky at the same time last year, so it's a spot where I could see it going a lot of different ways. It's hard to like just envision it going so much better than it did last year, just for no reason at all. It feels like no actual physical change, but at the same time, it can't get much worse. So, maybe they get on a bit of a luck streak to start the year and things just start to roll from there, and kind of the same way things unraveled on the basis of them being unlucky last year. I don't know. I can tell myself both stories at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We can spin a narrative any way we want, but I do think that coaching was a big factor in what went wrong last year. Like, not that the players weren't performing, but that Andrew Brunette didn't adjust, right? Like he's known as a pretty good coach, right? Like he had a great first couple seasons there in Nashville. Like they overachieved, right? Especially the year prior where they made the playoffs and took the Canucks to 7 and or 6 or whatever it was, and had a great playoffs there. But I think one of the things I've noted just digging in on Burnett here in the Preds is that the system that he wants to run it hinges on speed, right? It hinges on aggressiveness, quick transitions, and all the rest. Well, the roster that you have here, like you sign some of these old guys, right? Like they don't have it, right? That roster lacks speed. So, and to me, where Burnett failed was not making adjustments for the roster that he has, right? And we've talked about that before in this series, where coaches need to look at what you have and then tailor something to that roster. And I feel like that didn't happen. Maybe he thought it was going to look different, and then they were reeling by the time like these L's started piling up, and everybody's shooting percentage plummeted, right? So I also think too, one of the adjustments I'd love to see, he's got to start prioritizing some of these younger players, right? I'm not saying he shouldn't play this 200-foot speed aggressive game, but you got players that could potentially do that you're minimizing right now. So I think he has a pretty short leash there in Nashville, right? Good coach or not, like nothing's been going well. He had an insane run of bad luck. I mean, Preds, they were 19th overall in goals, expected goals for, 5-on-5, 15th on the power play. That's middling, but they just weren't converting and the vibes were bad. So I'm interested to see how he adjusts this season.
All right, let's talk about this power play. To me, it feels pretty locked in. We have Philip Forsberg, we have Steven Stamkos, we have Roman Josi, as long as he's healthy, Ryan O'Reilly to take the draws, and Jonathan Marchessault. So honestly, at this point, I'm looking down the lineup and I'm like, who are the other options here that have talent to push the incumbents? And I'm not coming up with a lot of answers.
Oh, well, you'd be wrong, Nate. What are you doing, Nathaniel? We got some bits and pieces here. But I mean, I agree with you. I think those guys are locked in. I do think that ROR, Ryan O'Reilly, is going to be the guy that could potentially be moved off. They had Gus Nyquist on them kind of switching back and forth with Ryan O'Reilly getting most of the minutes, but and he's a great face-off man as well. So you got to keep that under consideration. But we got Luke Evangelista out here. We got Fedor Svechkov out here. These guys can play on the power play. Okay. Evangelista in particular, this is a guy that I think needs to be elevated up the lineup a little bit. So I'm hoping that happens, but in terms of what this team was able to do, like I said, 15th on the power play, they were 6th best in expected goals for per 60 on the power play. So they were generating fine, right? You lose a guy like Roman Josi for the portion of the season that he was gone, that is going to make a big difference in all this stuff that we talked about. So if we can get Josi back to full health, like he's dealing with POTS right now, and hopefully that doesn't affect his play moving forward. And if it doesn't, I think that, we're going to see that speed game come back a little bit for Nashville. And I think the power play will be better as well.
All right, let's dig in on the projections here. Let's start with Ryan O'Reilly. I have him for 22 goals, 35 assists, 57 points. You have him for 19 goals, 39 assists, 58 points. I think we both see the role here as fairly similar. Probably going to get a decent amount of power play time. Probably going to spend a lot of time alongside Philip Forsberg, who is the #1 offense generator on this squad. So I think we expect to see a decent season from O'Reilly, but he's not like a big-time shooter. 155 shots for me. He doesn't really hit. He'll have a decent amount of blocks. 65 blocks is my projection, but not a guy who's really going to move the needle a lot for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, and I think his value is really tied to being on that top line. And I think he'll start there. Like that's what makes sense to me. But I also like they had a couple times, or for a lot of time last year, they had the 3 right shots, Stamkos, Forsberg, and Marchessault on a top line. And they rolled with that even up to the end of the year. Whereas Ryan O'Reilly was down the second line there with the bunt cake, Michael Bunting and Luke Evangelista. So what are they going to do? Like to me, we need to see, this is one of the things that I thought that wasn't an adjustment for Burnett as well. Like, why do you have 3 guys shooting right-handed on one line? Like, that's kind of easy to exploit, like put them on their backhand, right? Like it's kind of weird. Obviously, the defenseman handedness makes a difference as well. But I think what makes logical sense is having Ryan O'Reilly up on the top line. So that I sort of projected that way. But it's just not a guy we're going to get excited about. Low shots, low chance generation. He's more of a role player at this point. A good one at that though, right? I've got him for 16 power play points, 58 points. That'll play, right? That'll be a guy, a center only that you can get way later in your drafts. And it's not a whiff. Like, yeah, I think this guy's, even his floor is probably like 50 points.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is probably in the bag there. Yeah, I mean, I have him for 19 power play points. If he gets off the top power play for any reason, then probably he immediately has no value in most standard sized leagues. So that is a concern for him there. Philip Forsberg, I have for 35 goals, 43 assists, 78 points. You have him for 36 goals, 44 assists, 80 points. It's a player that will generate a ton of shots, 286 shots for me, 144 hits, 48 blocks. He's going to do a lot of the stuff we like for fantasy. I think that it's another year where I'm going to be in on Philip Forsberg. I see him in the mid-second a fair bit, and if I'm just going straight by my projections, he's my 13th ranked player. We are getting to the end of the episode here. 13th ranked player in points per game in the APL points format. So he definitely does all those things. And you still have the ceiling case of what we saw a couple of years ago where he popped off to the 90-point level. And that is a potential. Maybe it's not as likely as it feels like it was that year, but I think this is a player with a world of talent, and I don't want to be out.
Yep. I think this is a guy too that's going to definitely benefit from a full season of Roman Josi, right? Although, like, just digging in here, Forsberg had a better second half than the first half, which is, so there you go. But I mean, Nashville was already kind of in a lot of pain at that point, and it's kind of hard to judge what happened there at the end because they were kind of mailing it in. So that said, I feel like this guy's going to bounce back in a big way. I've only projected him for 80 points after a 76-point season last year, so I feel like I'm being a little bit conservative, but we know what this guy's capable of doing. Nashville in particular, their rush play was, they could not get anything going. But, again, healthy season of Josi, and then Forsberg did do that. He's a really good rusher, and they're going to need him to be. And we're going to need to see a better season out of Steven Stamkos, which we'll talk about in a bit. So I definitely see a case where he's going to get back to sort of point per game, and that power play is still cooking. Like, he had 26 points last year. This is a guy you need to absolutely be in on as a left winger as well.
Right. Jonathan Marchessault, I have for 25 goals, 38 assists, 63 points. You have him for 27 goals, 34 assists, 61 points. There was some stuff that came out about him being kind of unhappy and potentially looking for a way out of Nashville. That didn't come to fruition, and it seems like that talk has quieted down for the time being. Good shot volume here, 226 shots, 82 hits. So he does some of that as well. If he does secure a pretty consistent top-line, top power play role, you could definitely see another ceiling scenario for Marchessault. Ceiling scenario here is probably still only 65 to 70 points, but with the good peripherals, that's going to be valuable.
Yep, I don't have too much more to add. I feel like Marchessault's value got nuked the minute he won the Conn Smythe Trophy. We're just like, now we're thinking of him as an upper echelon player or a next level player than the player that he actually is, the way I'm sort of valuing him, which is like this 55 to 65 point player max, right? He had a huge year in his last year in Vegas, 69 points, nice, and 42 goals, what the hell? But I don't think he's going to be coming close to that again, certainly not here in Nashville. So again, just a guy that I feel fairly safe with. Like, it's a safe projection, albeit not exciting, right? 61 points. I think he's probably in the 55 to 60 point range this upcoming season with decent periffs.
Steven Stamkos, I have as centering the second line in this projection, 29 goals, 34 assists, 63 points for me, 33 goals, 35 assists, 68 points for you there, Blake. You're a little bit higher on Stamkos. So, yeah, talk to me about that a little bit. You think this is power play? What are you excited about, if at all, with Stamkos this year?
I feel like they need to move him back to the wing. I think that's what I'm hoping happens. And that's sort of what I've projected is going to happen. Like, I've got, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Evangelista as my top right wing. And I've got Stamkos, Svechkov, and Marchessault as my second line. That's sort of how maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe that's not what actually happens. Stamkos, they had him at center for a lot of last year, but he's better on the wing, right? It opens him up offensively, which is clearly what Nashville needs to do, right? Their offense was dead last in the league. They stunk in terms of actual goals. So, I think they're going to move him to the wing there, and I think he'll be able to get his shot off a lot more. I do like the power play. Like, this guy's an amazing power play performer. He only had 21 points last year. I think that's light. He's not going to get back up into the 30s like he did with Tampa, but I've got him for 25 power play points or whatever it is. Yeah. Just little things here and there, but I really do think they need to move him back to the wing. And, we'll talk about him later, but Svechkov's a player I'm excited about, and someone who can be in my opinion, a glue type of player that can increase the efficiency of a player like Steven Stamkos.
Right. Yeah, I do see the ceiling scenario with Stamkos. I'm actually pretty into him, especially at cost. I think as an older player who took a downturn with a new team, everybody's like the easy narrative to tell yourself is that, okay, he's just not that good anymore. He was in a Kucherov situation in Tampa. Now he's in a spot where he can't do that. And now he's just no good at all. I don't think that's the case. I think we do get a better version of Stamkos this year than we got a year ago. I think, yeah, again, how can it be worse than last year is part of that calculus as well. But I do think there are a few more outs to him producing a lot better this year than he did last. Michael Bunting, 20 goals, 18 assists, 38 points for me, 21 goals, 17 assists, rounding down to 37 points for you there, Blake. It's a player that, will have some streamability for sure, 176 shots, almost a hit per game for me, but realistically, I don't think there's a scenario in which he gets to a top power play. I think there are other players they would try that have more utility in a power play role, so for me, Bunting is who he is, just a guy that you might stream when Nashville has a good week.
Bunting was who we thought he was, and we let him off the hook. All right. Bunting was one of our sleepers last year. The bunt cake, we did that. I'm going to take credit for that. That was not yours. That was mine. But, he was in a good situation in Pittsburgh. In my opinion, power play one, he had some really good minutes there towards the end of the season previous to that, and then started on power play one. So any fantasy value he had was with Pittsburgh, in my opinion. And his role here in Nashville, it's not the same, right? He's not going to get a sniff of power play one. And he's more of a role player, like a grinder, like a dingus, which just, plays right into who he is actually. But yeah, I mean, if he ever did get power play one for whatever reason, this is a guy that can do things there. He's a guy that looks reasonable under the hood, right? In terms of, scoring and chance metrics. But yeah, it's just not a guy I'm going to be excited about this upcoming season, certainly in Nashville.
All right, Luke Evangelista, the other member of the second line for my projection. I have him for 18 goals, 21 assists, 39 points. You have him for 19 goals, 25 assists, and 44 points. This is a player that I actually can get a little bit excited about in the best case scenario. Maybe bumps Marchessault or O'Reilly off the top power play if things break really right.
Yep.
Good shot volume. I have him for 15 minutes, 15 seconds total time on ice, and even with that kind of pretty low average time on ice estimate, he comes out to 181 shots with this just under 40 points projection. So any scenario in which he's able to get himself up the lineup, that would be pretty exciting for me. It feels like one of these players who just needs a little bit more of a role. And so, yeah, Luke Evangelista, a player that I might actually be interested in. Not a guy I'm drafting necessarily, but definitely a watch list player.
You bet your sweet bippy, buddy. All right. This is a guy we need to keep our eye on. This is a player of interest, right? And it reminds me very much what's going on in Nashville right now, like what happened with Columbus last year. We got guys like Kent Johnson. We got guys like Kirill Marchenko, guys that can really do something, that are getting minimized and not getting ice time. To me, Luke Evangelista is in that category exactly. Like, get this guy out there, give him some minutes. He's very much like Kent Johnson, right? Big time rusher, big time play driver. And obviously like entering the zone, he does that really, really well, and good shots as well. Plus, one thing that he has over Ken Johnson, he forechecks. He's a great forechecker, Luke Evangelista. So he's bringing a lot to the table. He just needs minutes to do that. He has had a cup of coffee on the top power play unit with top guys, and it looks pretty damn good. Like, this guy's got a great shot. He's been pretty inefficient to this point in his career. So I'm just bumping up a little bit of efficiency there, baking in that he's going to get a chance to play with some better players this year at the very least. And that's kind of how I came out with my projection.
Right, and Fedor Svechkov, who you alluded to, I have for 13 goals, 17 assists, 30 points. You have him for 17 goals, 23 assists, and 40 points. This is the biggest difference in our projections on Nashville. You're 10.6 points higher on Svechkov. I think we both like the player. I did a little feature on him in season last year when he was
Yes.
getting some roles and getting a good, doing a good job in that role. And then things kind of fell off. And then in the last little bit of the season, his minutes really fell off, and it seemed like he was getting minimized. And that's what's kind of scared me away here. I think we can get into it, but I think what we'll find in these projections is probably that I just have the minutes way lower than you. So talk to me about the bull case for Svechkov that you're seeing here.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. I mean, to me, the bull case starts with Steven Stamkos on the wing, right? We need Svechkov up as the 2C. I'm not saying like he's an ideal 2C. Like this guy's really young, right? He's probably not ready for that. But I don't see a lot of other options with Nashville. So I think there is a pathway for him to at least again get deployed as the 2C for parts of the season. So that right off the bat is going to up his time on ice, in my opinion. Plus, like Corey Schneider on X actually just tweeted something out about Fedor Svechkov, and it reminded me that that's a player that I was interested in, that you were interested in throughout the season last year, and it's because he's able to generate shots and chances for his teammates really well, and he generates his own shots and chances for himself to a
Yeah.
lesser degree, but he's very much an offensive minded player, but also he's amazing at retrieving the puck and helping the team break the puck out. So he's like a glue piece between the defensemen and the wingers, right? And so a guy like Steven Stamkos, if he plays with him, like Stamkos is a great skater north-south, but like he's not really coming back to help drive the play. He's sort of up around the blue line, where Svechkov is a guy that can sort of connect those two pieces, and he did that really well this last season. And again, he shows out in all kinds of zone entry stuff as well, passes from the center lane, which is a really good indicator of a guy that's pretty offensive minded and setting up some pretty good chances. So I think all that to say, you're right. I think our big difference is going to be ice time, because I know that you like the player as well, and maybe I am a little bit hot on this. It's just a guy that I want to highlight. I want people to know about this player. You're not drafting him, right? Unless you see something crazy out of training camp, like Svechkov on power play 1 and line 2. You're like,
Right.
okay, maybe I'm interested, right? But just know that Svechkov is a player, if he's elevated up the lineup, is a guy that is going to do something for you for fantasy and in real life. I really do believe that Nashville needs to start getting these younger players some way to find them more minutes.
Yeah, so let's dig in just for a second here. I have him for 13 minutes average time on ice total. Really lean in on the fact that they did kind of diminish his minutes down the back end of last year. I assume you've got a bigger number there.
Yeah, I got him for 15. So
Okay.
15 on the year. I mean, and in fairness, the last 21 games, he did average 14 minutes time on ice. It was the two stretches before that, like that he was down around like 11. So
Mhm.
they did bump him up in the last 21 games for like 14 minutes. But before that, it was like slim pickings.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the player. I love the potential step here. I am not super convinced that he'll be given that opportunity. I think maybe that is one of the failings of Burnett as a coach, as we've discussed, that he's not always identifying the players who might actually be able to make a difference
Yeah.
in the right roles. Even if the general system that he creates is conducive to fantasy, it's getting the right players in the right spot all the time that maybe he's not the best at. Still, I really like the player. I have him for a 70% even strength IPP. I think that he does kind of control
Yeah.
play and do a good job of all that. My question is really just, will he ever get those line mates? Like I have him for 26.5 shots 4 per 60 at even strength. So I assume you have him for higher there if you're projecting him to get more Stamkos exposure.
Mhm.
That totally makes sense to me. It's just how much of that you're willing to bake in from the start here.
This is going to sewer my projections at the end of the year. My Svechkov take is like, yep, it's going to be tight, hopefully between me and Nate, and then my Svechkov take just going to bounce me right down to the basement. It's going to be terrible.
All right, a couple other players here. Eric Holla joins the team this offseason. Definitely not going to be much more than a role player, but I mean, they needed some forward depth on this team as well. So he's here. I'm for 12.6 goals, 13.6 assists, comes down to 26 points in total. Young for 13 goals, 16 assists, 29 points. Don't think there's really any scenario in which you're into Holla unless he is somehow centering Stamkos or something like that up on the second line for a period of time. I did do a quick projection for Zachary Leroux. I wish that I didn't. He came out to 10 goals, 12 assists, 22 points. Dingus to end all dinguses. Go Google Zachary Leroux suspension history history, and you will be shocked and appalled by what you find. Let's move on to the defense. Roman
Wiener behavior.
Yossi. Roman Yossi here. 15 goals, 51 assists, 66
Yeah.
points for me. 17 goals, 47 assists, 65 points for you, Blake, with the round up. The biggest question with Yossi is obviously Potts. What will happen to him this year? They've come out and said that they expect him to be able to play, that they expect him to be able to manage it. Obviously, that was not the case last year. We don't really know when he got the diagnosis and
Mhm.
when they started to try to actively manage it. One point that I have seen made, and I think it is a particularly interesting one, especially just given the fact that they seem confident that they can manage it, is there are some pretty high level athletes who have pots who have continued to perform at a high level. Katie Ledecky, I believe that's how you say her last name. Apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. One of the greatest swimmers in history, has a book about it actually, and about her
Cool.
struggles with it, which you could go check out if you're interested. But yeah, there's a whole list. There's a website actually, eds.clinic is the website, and they have an article about famous Olympic athletes with POTS specifically. And there's a lot of them. So it is actually, more common than you might think that athletes deal with this. Obviously, there's a spectrum with this, and we don't really know where Yossi falls on that spectrum, how severe his condition might be. Maybe they don't even really know 100% yet how severe it is. And that is the scary part with Roman
Yeah.
Yossi, is what might be the case. Like, in my mind, it still really does range the full gamut from he's totally fine and he's basically back to where he was previously this year as they're able to manage it, to the other end of the spectrum where it becomes completely unmanageable and we're getting a Roman Yossi retirement announcement some point, maybe by the end of the season. That's pretty scary when you're talking about a guy that you might have to take with a pretty early pick in your
Mhm.
drafts. And to me, that's where it's going to come down to. Like, if you're taking Roman Yossi in the second round, I'm not there for that at this point anymore. The risk is just too great. The kind of pick other players that you're passing over to take Roman Yossi at that time, I'm just not willing to take on that risk that early in the draft. You get him into the fourth round, and now we're starting to have a conversation where it's not so deleterious to your team if you're taking Roman Yossi in the fourth round versus taking him in the second round. Where do you think you fall on Roman Yossi this year, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, it's all just dependent on your risk tolerance because yeah, like all that stuff you said. Thanks for the deep dive into pots. That's pretty damn nice. I was gonna look into it. I'm aware of it. I just wasn't sure about the details. But if he's good to go, and they're saying he is, and he's saying he is, this man is elite. He's still the potential number two defenseman in the league for fantasy, right? I stand behind that. Like, this guy going, at 100% is still the number two guy behind Cale Makar, in my opinion. But he's not, and we can't project him that way. There's no way we can. So I think, yeah, fourth round Yossi, that's where I'm starting to go like, okay, I'll take a ride, right? But even then, that's a fourth round pick.
Yep.
That's big draft capital that you're, spending to get Roman Yossi. So I don't know what I'm going to do with Roman Yossi this year, to be honest. I'm still kind of parsing that out. I have him in a couple best balls that I've picked. Certainly the early ones, whereas his rank was so low. I was getting him in like the seventh or eighth round. I'm like, yeah, I'll take Roman Yossi in the eighth round. That's fine. But that's not going to be the case come true draft season here. You're going to have to spend a fourth round pick to pick up Roman Yossi, maybe a third one. So yeah, I think fourth seems a little bit hot for me. I think I'd rather have something that's more of a sure thing. Like, this is an injury narrative. This guy has an actual disease that he's managing. And worst case scenario is, like you said, he doesn't play anymore. Right. So yeah, I want to shout out to Roman Yossi, obviously, in his health, but secondary to that, I don't want to sewer my fantasy hockey team by having my fourth round pick just retire mid-season.
Yeah, definitely one where we'll have to monitor any more news we might get about it. Yeah, some hopeful possibilities out there, but definitely a huge range of variation on the player due to the condition. And we wish him and his family nothing but the best as he continues to deal with this moving forward. Lastly, here, Brady Shea, I have for 10 goals, 24 assists, rounding up to 35 points. You have him for 11 goals, 27 assists, 38 points. I think there's a case to be made that Brady Shea gets a little more comfortable. Year two did really seem like he was a bit of a fish out of water in the first half of the year last year, and then actually did start to come into into his own a little bit towards the back end of the season, especially when Yossi was out and he had to take on a bigger role, at least for fantasy purposes. Guy who will put up some decent shots, 161 shots, that'll play. But the peripherals otherwise are not that great. 55 hits, 91 blocks is what I have him for. That's not really great for a defenseman by any stretch. Really, I think Brady Shea is a bit of an afterthought for me when it comes to fantasy. Even with top power play, I don't think he's a difference maker. And for that reason, I'm probably not going to have him in a lot of spots this year.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me that Brady Shea sort of fell off, even if Nashville wasn't as terrible as they were last year. Like he was going from Carolina, which is one of the most structured teams in the league, right? You know exactly where you're going. You know exactly what the identity of the team is. Well, Nashville was in flux last year, and Brady Shea was a part of that. Like, here's a bunch of new players that are now going to be the nucleus of the team. Try and figure it out, guys. And it obviously didn't work. Brady Shea got caved in out there. But I still got a bit of love for this player. He's a double-digit goal scorer at without power play time. I love that. I think, ceiling for Brady Shea, we could get him back up to around 40 points, 42, 43 points. I feel like that's in the wheelhouse with double digit goals. And that is absolutely valuable for fantasy. The problem is, how do we project that after what we just saw last season? Right. So I do think that Roman Josi, even though he's saying he's healthy, I think is going to get less minutes, even by just a minute. Like Roman Josi plays 25 a night. So maybe he plays 24 this year. Maybe Brady Shea picks up those minutes, right, and plays a little bit more than the 21-53 that he played last season. So that could equal some more production for him as well. But yeah, it's a guy, we're certainly not drafting him, right? This is a guy that you're going to want to watch at the beginning of the season, how he's doing. I could see him popping off. I could see him getting 40 points. And to me, that is valuable for fantasy and a guy that'll probably spend a little bit of time on somebody's fantasy squad.
For sure. All right, Blake, we've got your top 3 targets. Give it to me.
Give it to me, Neil. Right now. All right. I got Roman Josi as my number 1, although I just talked myself out of that number 1 pick. So this is what happens when Nate and I do these episodes is we're figuring things out as we're talking. And in top 3 targets, I don't know if I put Roman Josi first. I'd probably put Steven Stamkos first at this point because of the value, right? You're getting crazy value on Stamkos. He should have dual eligibility. And I do think that there's still, best case scenario, Stamkos could get 75 points. I think, we've got some pretty low projections on him, in the 60s. And I still think that's really valuable. He's a great player. I trust the talent of the player. He's the age-related decline. I think it's exaggerated. He's still a really quick skater. So I got him. I'll go Roman Josi number 2, just because you got to be in on that. If he's fully healthy, now you got a 70-point defenseman, locked and loaded that you got in the 4th round. What? That's league-winning crap right there. And then I got Fedor Svechkov as my number 3. This is a silly pick, but again, I just want to highlight this man as a player of interest that I think if he gets any kind of ice time out there, you gotta take a look at him certainly as a streamer and then potentially a streamer with benefits. But shout out to Luke Evangelista as well. I think that's a guy that's more likely to get more minutes and more production.
All right, for me, I've got Philip Forsberg, number 1. I think he will get faded in a fair number of drafts this year, maybe back into the 2nd, maybe into the 3rd in some drafts. We'll see, what Yahoo's ADP might be when it comes out, where those so-called experts place him to begin in Yahoo. And so I think Forsberg, for me, top of the 2nd is where the conversation starts, where I'd be willing to think about Philip Forsberg. So definitely back in on him yet again. Steven Stamkos, number 2 for me. I think we're both in on the player. I don't think he's, gone over that age cliff by any stretch of the imagination. And don't think it can get worse than last year. I think it probably does get better and maybe significantly better. And lastly, Luke Evangelista, for the reasons we mentioned, if there is a player that takes a step and makes an impression on this team this year, Svechkov is a good shout. For me, it's Evangelista. I think there's maybe a bit more of a path for him potentially as a winger on the Forsberg line, or potentially replacing Marchessault, top power play or something like that. So for me, I'll split the hairs in Evangelista's favor there. Well, Blake, we did it. If they made it this far, I think the viewers and
Congratulations.
they should probably go click the Discord community link, join us in there, do some APL mocks. We've got those started. We've got best balls going off every day. Again, if you could like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, any of that you're willing to do really does help us out. But that is going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, terrific free resource. All the microstats you heard today came from All Three Zones, terrific paid resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.